Chapter 25:31. What about paparazzi? Yisu said angrily. What if we run into paparazzi? Fan Fan is already surrounded by enemies. How is she going to take it if she makes the headlines tomorrow? As a good friend, she had to support her. Paparazzi. Genie Xuan smiled bitterly and shook his head. There haven't been paparazzi near my house for a long time. When I was single, I would be on the hot search list from time to time because of my relationship problems. But now there were only two names on the hot search list. One was Gong Yubai, and the other was Luo Qingxin. In Genie Xuan's eyes, these two names were so eye-catching that he couldn't bear to look at them. What's wrong now? Yisu stomped her feet angrily and chased after Gu Fanfan. At this moment, he and Xiao were the only two people in the room. Xiao sighed deeply and patted him on the shoulder. Do you regret it? I don't talk. Xiao looked at his complicated eyes and said, I understand. Why don't we think of a special way to get Luo Qingxin back? Xiao and Genie Xuan had known each other for many years. Genie Xuan was able to debut thanks to Xiao. At this juncture, a brother's suggestion was always the most moving. But Gong Yubai also likes her. I'm afraid I don't have a chance. Genie Xuan looked very lonely and regretted that he made the wrong choice. He really thought that Luo Qingxin was only a match his parents forced on him. He didn't expect her to be so dazzling. Now, every time he saw her in the headlines, he felt that she was so dazzling. At first, he thought that Luo Qingxin was just playing hard to get and would soon reveal her true nature. But as time passed, he found that he had lost all contact with her. Whether it was her phone, WeChat, QQ, or MSN, she deleted all of them. Like a gust of wind, she disappeared from his world without any warning. But women, she always misses the first person she loved the most. The person she loves the most in her heart must still be you. Xiaoan looked at him with certainty and said, I think you have a chance. It just depends on whether you want to try. What should I do? Genie Xuan scratched his head angrily and said, I don't even have a way to get close to her. When I came back last night, I thought about it and wanted to start with the family. But my parents said that the Luo family has already cut off contact with them. This time, because of the engagement, the two families' relationship had made a special progress. Or not only was it tense, but they had reached the point of no contact. His parents blamed him because Luo Qingxin had always liked him since they met. She always tried her best to make him happy. On the other hand, he was always indifferent and did not care about her at all. Both families understood this way of communication. Therefore, when Luo Qingxin proposed breaking off the engagement, the two elders of the Luo family immediately agreed. His parents also felt sorry for Luo Qingxin, so they didn't object at all. He was like a fly like a fly. Like a. Chapter 25:32. Can I really do that? Genie Xuan looked at Xiao and excitedly. I remember that Qingxin is very timid. In the past, I used to scare her with wild dogs so that she wouldn't follow me. Now that he thought about it, he felt very regretful and inexplicably panicked. If he could do it all over again, he didn't think he would lose to Gong Yubai. Then that's it. Xiaoan waved his hand and said, Don't worry. Young girls are all afraid of gangsters. Even a knife can scare them into fainting. But Genie Xuan frowned and said, My movements are not good. I'm afraid I can't handle them. He didn't want to get hurt chasing a girl. The person he loved the most in the world was himself. Don't worry. Xiaoan laughed and said, It's just an act. You just have to push them and they'll fall to the ground. Don't worry. You just have to wait for the day when your ex-fiancé is alone. Okay. He nodded and said, I'll work hard. You really have to work hard. Xiaoan looked at Gu Fanfan, who was being slowly brought back by Yisu, and said, Otherwise, your future acting career might be affected. I don't want to see you as my girlfriend anymore. I'll leave first. Let me know when you're done. I guarantee it'll be okay. Thank you, Director Xiao. You're welcome. We're brothers. That night, the moon hung like a hook. A dirty plan unfolded just like that. Genie Xuan waited for a long time and sent many people to inquire about Luo Qingxin's schedule. Finally, 3 days later, he found out that she was going to Sea City alone. It wasn't business, but a private matter. Her cousin was getting married, and she was going to attend. Fortunately, he had this opportunity. Otherwise, with Gong Yubai following her around all day, he wouldn't have a chance to make a move. A few days ago, he almost got hot-headed and wanted to block Gong Yubai in the alley. After he saved the damsel in distress, he could make this so-called national idol admit defeat. However, Shaon reminded him that it was best not to provoke Gong Yubai. Although he didn't know much about his identity, at least he had a lot of fans and high traffic. If something went wrong and it was exposed, it would be terrible. Jin Yixuan endured it. Finally, this was the perfect opportunity. Moreover, it was raining heavily tonight. It was definitely a good opportunity to be a hero and save the damsel in distress. At 8:30 p.m., the sky rumbled with lightning and thunder. Luo Qingchen got off the plane and went directly to the garage of the airport to pick up the car. But because the rain was too heavy, the main road was blocked, and they could only take small paths. She was holding a big red umbrella, a red and white sweater, a brown pleated skirt, and a big pair of sunglasses. Even though it was dark at night, she still looked very eye-catching in the rain. Luo Qingchen glanced at her phone and called Gong Yubai to tell him that she was safe. As soon as the other party picked up the phone, 7 or 8 people with knives rushed out of the alley, each of them looking fierce. The leader of the group spoke with a rough accent. Yo, why would such a beautiful young lady appear here? Originally, I only wanted to rob her of her wealth. She's so beautiful that I want to rape her. Luo Qingchen's cold eyes narrowed, but she didn't hang up. She heard Gong Yubai's anxious voice on the other end of the phone. Qingchen, where are you? Give me your location. I ran into some trouble. Luo Qingchen snorted coldly. The corners of her mouth curved into an extremely cold smile. But they can only blame themselves for being unlucky. Chapter 25:33. As the rain fell, Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes. Her eyes were cold. At this moment, she felt that she wasn't Luo Qingchen under the spotlight, but the real her. Yo, little girl, you're still afraid of trouble. The rough man said, come home with me tonight, okay? The moment his voice fell, his dirty hands reached over with a nauseating smell. It gave people the impression that he hadn't bathed for a few days. At the same time, in a dark corner, Shaon and Jin Yixuan saw what was happening in front of them. Jin Yixuan's eyes were filled with excitement, while Shaon gave him a thumbs up. He indicated that everything was under control. In a few seconds, he could enjoy the fairy tale hero saving the beauty. Okay, Jin Yixuan nodded firmly. He was planning to appear the moment the rough man touched Luo Qingchen, but he didn't expect that this scene didn't happen. On the contrary, an unbelievable scene occurred. Luo Qingchen's cold eyes narrowed. She quickly turned around and heavily hit the rough man's neck with her right hand. In the next second, she suddenly pressed her elbow, and the sound of bones cracking sounded in the silent, rainy night. Then came the sound of the rough man's wailing. Ah, pain, 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 so painful. He cried out in pain and said to the subordinates behind him, what are you doing? Hurry, hurry up and save me. Who? Brother who? The subordinates behind him looked at each other, and their legs couldn't stop trembling. The girl in front of them was too fast. So fast that they didn't see clearly how the petite body avoided Chun-Hu's touch. She had already pressed him to the ground. Kneeling on the ground, the big knife with the word tiger engraved on it was placed on his neck. It's justifiable self-defense. If one comes, I'll kill one. If 2 come, I'll kill a pair. Luo Qingchen's voice was extremely cold. Wherever her eyes swept over, there was a burst of coldness, and people couldn't help but feel their hair stand on end. Hiss! Chun-Hu's subordinates all sucked in a breath of cold air. This. Why is this different from the script? Didn't they say that they were just going to put on an act and wait for a certain young master to save them? Why was this well-known celebrity so terrifying? Bah! One of the lackeys angrily spat and raised his voice. A little girl can scare us? We eat Brother Who's food, and we're Brother Who's clothes, so we can't back down at this critical moment. Brothers go. Everyone looked at each other again, although there was still some fear in their heart. However, they all believed that there must be someone who could subdue Luo Qingqian in front of them. Bring it on. Luo Qingqian laughed coldly. It's been a while since I last trained my muscles and bones. In the next second, a group of people swarmed towards Luo Qingqian using the so-called human wave tactic. Each of them had a ferocious look on their faces as they bared their fangs and brandished their claws. They only saw her jump up and directly jump behind them. With a series of extremely fast movements, they couldn't even see her position in the dark. A pair of 10-centimeter high heels stepped on their faces one after another, and waves of groans could be heard in the silent rainy night. The moment she landed, her hand was still holding that big red umbrella, and her cold eyes flickered with a faint light. Chapter 25:34. Xiao and Genie Xuan, who were standing not far away, were stunned. Genie Xuan wanted to go out, but Xiao grabbed him tightly. If they went out now, they would definitely be exposed. The entertainment news they wanted to be on would probably become the social news. Xiao hurriedly pulled Jean Yishuan out of the alley from the other side. Other than nervousness, there was fear in his eyes. He was very afraid, even though he wasn't the one who confronted Luo Qingqian in the rainy night. But he clearly saw Luo Qingqian's eyes. Under those pure and moving eyes, there was a murderous look. He never thought that a little girl would have such a look. How much wind and rain did she go through to become so cold? Miss, oh no. Heroine, please spare my life. Chunhu knelt at her feet and kept kowtowing. We were asked to do it. Really, you can't blame us. Asked to do it? Luo Qingqian looked up coldly. Who? Actually, the first people who jumped in her mind were Gu Fanfan and Yi Su. After all, the supporting female lead wouldn't let her have an easy time. But since Gu Fanfan was a Mary Sue, and the system didn't tell her that Gu Fanfan was evil, he wouldn't do such a thing. Even if Gu Fanfan wanted to, she wouldn't do such a thing. After all, she was a Mary Sue. She had to be a kind person. The people kneeling on the ground looked at each other. With a schwa sound, Luo Qingqian's knife fell on his neck. She narrowed her eyes. Swords don't blink. If I kill someone in self-defense, I'll still be the victim. Do you understand? Chunhu's eyes were filled with fear. He trembled as he said, It's Director Xiao who asked us to do it. Xiao? Luo Qingqian frowned. Her eyes flashed with coldness. She didn't expect this director to want to deal with her. Logically speaking, there was no benefit to dealing with her now. Time had already finished filming. Even if they wanted to deal with her, it would be a little too late. Actually, we're only here to act. Director Xiao wanted to create a scene where the hero saves the damsel in distress. He wanted us to make a cameo appearance. Chunhu trembled as he said, We really didn't plan to do anything to the young lady. As he spoke, he seemed to feel particularly wronged, and tears almost fell from his eyes. For such a tough and rough man to suddenly reveal the expression of a little puppy, how scary was that? Luo Qingqian coldly threw the knife on the ground and said, Scram. When everyone heard this, they didn't look at each other this time. Instead, they ran out of the alley with all their might. Their aura was completely different from when they first entered the alley. It was as if the world inside the alley was hell to them, and the world outside was heaven. Chunhu ran at the very front. He didn't even dare to pick up the knife with his name engraved on it. He scrambled forward. Little did he know that before he reached the alley, he was stopped by a young man in a suit with a black umbrella in his hand. The umbrella wasn't open. Under the diffuse moonlight, it looked even more eerie. The young man's eyes were cold. It was as if he was just standing there, but his entire body was emitting waves of cold air. Chapter 25:35. In the next second, a revolver with a silencer was pressed against Chunhu's temple. His entire body instantly froze. Probably because he was too scared, he directly peed his pants. It felt as if he had escaped from hell, but in reality, he had entered an even lower level of hell. The terrifying atmosphere instantly suffocated him, and his legs went soft as he knelt down once more. Don't kill me. I didn't do anything. He could barely form a sentence. The lackeys behind him all knelt down and kowtowed with all their might. This was a handgun. As long as the man in front of them pulled the trigger, their lives would be over. What else do you want to do? Gong Yubai roared. His eyes, which were as deep as the sea, were surrounded by layers of complex emotions. He rarely got angry, so much so that in the past 10 years he had barely gotten angry. But today, he couldn't help it. When he felt that the person he cared about the most was in danger, his heart subconsciously panicked. This panic instantly rushed to his heart, making it difficult for him to breathe. It was probably at that moment that he confirmed his feelings of love. Liking someone and loving someone were different. Before, he always thought that he only liked Luo Qingchen. That was why he liked fans putting their names together and why he always liked being stuck with her. His friends always said that he couldn't endure his first love and finally fell in love with someone. However, it was just liking someone. But now he knew. His feelings for that girl weren't just because he liked her, but because he was willing to risk everything to go to hell with her. Let me go. Let me go. Let me go. Chunhu kowtowed as he begged for mercy. I beg you. I beg you. Let me go. Save those words for the king of hell. As soon as his voice fell, he raised his right hand and aimed it at Chunhu's head, intending to pull the trigger. In the next second, a voice as clear as water slowly rang out. It was like the sound of a bell being drunk in a cool breeze, fluttering in the rainy night. Let them go. Luo Qingshun slowly walked out of the alley with an umbrella and said, They have been beaten up very badly by me. They didn't have any evil intentions, so they won't lose their lives. Although Luo Qingshun didn't know Gong Yubai's identity, she could vaguely see several black limousines parked at the entrance of the alley. He had a gun, so his identity was definitely not simple. Thank you, heroine. Thank you, heroine. Chunhu seemed to be grabbing onto a life-saving straw as he desperately said, Heroine, good people will be rewarded. Good people, scram. Before he could finish speaking, Gong Yubai coldly uttered a single word. Seeing that she was safe and sound, he felt a lot more relieved. After receiving the call was hung up not long after. It took him almost the fastest time to find this place and get here. He had blocked the road and set up a special passage. He had done everything he could, but his heart was still in his throat all the way. Now that he had seen her in person, his heart finally calmed down. Otherwise, he would rather mistakenly kill 1,000 people tonight than let one person go. Chunhu and the others almost crawled out of the alley because they didn't have the strength to stand up. Luo Qingchun stood in place, her eyebrows slightly moving. She curled her lips and said, How did you know I was here? I think my phone was turned off. Chapter 25:36. Luo Qingchun was stunned and a bit dazed. It seemed like this was her first time seeing Gong Yubai like this. That pair of indifferent and elegant eyes were filled with fear. He was afraid. This was the first time in his life that he was afraid. Tonight, it was like he had experienced many firsts in his life. But these firsts all revolved around one person, the most important person in his remaining life. Luo Qingchun could feel the tension between them and quickly shrugged her shoulders. She gave a relaxed smile as she walked in front of him and said, Aren't I fine? How could these small fries? In the next second, before she could finish her sentence, the man reached out and pulled her into his embrace, hugging her tightly with all his might. It was like if he let go, she wouldn't belong to him anymore. The kind of fear if one didn't have feelings in their hearts, they wouldn't understand. Qingchun, I love you really. Ding, affection has increased by 20. Mission completion rate is now 100%. In that moment, Luo Qingchun's mind was still blank. She felt that a strong person like Gong Yubai was actually trembling when he hugged her. She couldn't even see through his heart. She just knew that he was afraid. Don't worry, I'm fine. Luo Qingchun buried her head in his chest and found that he was completely soaked. Perhaps at this moment, Gong Yubai was in his most embarrassing state, but she felt that this man, who was so worried about losing her, was so handsome when he was affectionate. He was more handsome than anyone else. He wasn't responding to her. He was just using the strength of his hug to tell her how important she was to him. Tonight's crescent moon was really beautiful. Their story was really beautiful. Luo Qingchun wasn't soaked by the rain, but Gong Yubai still insisted on taking her home. Gong Yubai's villa was very big, but it shouldn't be the main villa of the Gong family. It should be Gong Yubai's private villa. After taking a shower, Luo Qingshun stood in front of the bathroom mirror and suddenly felt a bit nervous. 2 hours ago, Gong Yubai had just said the words, "I love you" to her. 2 hours later, she was taking a shower at his house. What would happen after the shower? Luo Qingshun couldn't help but think about it. Her cheeks felt a little hot. After standing in front of the mirror for 10 minutes, Luo Qingshun opened the door and walked out. Gong Yubai was sitting in the living room, reading a document in English. She walked over to the sofa beside him and sat down, asking, "What are you looking at? I thought you were going to sleep in the bathroom tonight." Gong Yubai stroked her half-dried hair and frowned. "Why didn't you dry it?" I'm used to it." Luo Qingshun smiled and said, "You still haven't answered my question. Share acquisition documents for some groups." Gong Yubai picked up the hairdryer from a drawer. As he helped her dry her hair, he said, "It seems that our little girl is still very charming. Some people still want to play the hero, saving the damsel in distress drama. How stupid." After returning, it took her 5 minutes to investigate everything that happened tonight. This Jin Yishuan was really ridiculous. He actually wanted to pursue her. "You knew." Luo Qingshun pursed her lips and said, "Isn't a scumbag like him like this? The more he can't get something, the more he wants it. He never cherishes what he gets." "So he got you?" A certain someone said this with a particularly sour tone. Chapter 25:37. What she said was the truth. The host was the host, and she was herself. Different people led to different endings. Not every story had an end. Those who left halfway, whether they were willing or forced, had the same ending. At the same time, in a private Maserati car, Jin Yishuan sat in the front passenger seat with a bad expression. Shaoan, who was driving, was even more nervous. When he passed a traffic light, he almost stepped on the gas pedal and the brake pedal. "Careful, ah!" An old woman screamed and fell to the ground. With a long screech of the brakes, the old woman stood up while cursing. Shaoan hurriedly rolled down the window to apologize, but the old woman was already far away. "Director Xiao, what's wrong with you?" Jin Yishuan frowned and finally asked the question that had been on his mind all night. "Why were you in such a panic?" He just didn't understand why Xiao and didn't let him out in that situation. He could still be the hero. Although Luo Qingshun didn't seem to need him to save her, when I drove around the alley, I saw a few Lincoln limousines. Shaoan frowned. "I think we offended the wrong person." "Qingshun?" Jin Yishuan thought with a puzzled expression. "That shouldn't be. Although I'm not with Qingshun anymore, I still know her family well. After all, their families were old friends. He and Luo Qingshun knew each other when they were young, so he knew a little about the Luo family business." "I don't know, let's go back first." Shaoan sighed. "I didn't let you out in that situation because there was no need for you to be the hero. I didn't expect Luo Qingshun to have such skills." Even now, when he recalled her eyes, he still felt faintly afraid. It was a murderous look, as if they were in ancient times, he would have been killed by the so-called heroine. 3 days later, Youth is a Simple Thing decided to broadcast and held a press conference. Half of the entertainment industry's reporters were gathered at this press conference. After all, the original release date of Youth was half a year later during the summer break. This time, the release date was changed to the winter break. At the same time, You're More Amazing Than Time, which was released exclusively on Lychee TV for VIP members, was also moved to the winter vacation. It was said that their finale was shot 3 or 4 days ago, so the timing was very rushed. However, in order not to clash with each other, Time was released a month after Youth aired. Furthermore, it was at the climax of Youth. This was undoubtedly disadvantageous to Time. After this incident spread throughout the industry, no one from the production team of Time came forward to explain anything. On the other hand, Xiao and Jin Yishuan and the others from Youth hurriedly came out to explain. They claimed that everything was done in a normal way and that it was definitely not like the rumors outside. All of a sudden, the two competitive teen films were pushed to the forefront of the storm. Youth, which had been gradually fading out of the public eye, gained even more exposure due to this change of schedule. Luo Qingshan stood at the entrance of the press conference for youth. She was wearing a black jacket, a pair of standard sunglasses, and a pair of Dior $9.99 lipstick. Chapter 2538. She didn't want to come to this kind of press conference. After all, out of sight, out of mind. Over the past few days, when she was browsing Weibo, she saw a lot of things about some people in the youth crew. She had asked Gong Yubai a few times, but he was very calm every time. It was as if this kind of last-minute change of schedule didn't affect him at all. She really didn't know if he was too confident in his popularity or if he had already prepared for this. Knock, knock, knock. Come in. In a VIP suite on the 30th floor, Gong Yubai stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in a formal suit. This was the most luxurious five-star hotel in the city. Standing here, he had a panoramic view of the entire A city. It was especially prosperous. Sir Yushun is at the enemy's press conference. Do you have any instructions? Luo Qingshan revealed a faint smile as she sat down on the sofa on the side, looking at his back as she asked this. The fine sunlight poured down on his body, looking particularly dazzling from the side. Gong Yubai smiled faintly and slowly turned around. He walked to her side and sat down. Of course, everything is ready and waiting for you to watch. Watch what? Luo Qingshan blinked. Her clear, starry eyes were faintly sparkling. Gong Yubai looked at her eyebrows and tucked the stray hair in front of her forehead behind her ear. I won't let anyone who bullies you have an easy time. Gong Yubai was a person who either didn't do it or did it thoroughly and to the extreme. At this moment, Luo Qingshan suddenly felt the powerful aura around him. I feel like you're really mysterious. She pursed her lips and looked at him in a daze. It was probably because of its mysteriousness that it made people want to explore and understand it. I'm not mysterious. Gong Yubai looked at him with a doting gaze and said, You can know everything about me. There was no hesitation, no hiding. Luo Qingshan was stunned for 2 seconds, then nodded seriously. Gong Yubai glanced at the clock on the wall and said, It's about time. I'll take you to a gluttonous feast. At 6:30 p.m., the ballroom on the 3rd floor of the hotel was filled with reporters and friends from the cast of Youth. Luo Qingshan sat in a VIP seat on the 2nd floor. It was also a VIP seat, but it was already booked by others. As soon as she sat down, a very formally dressed person who looked like a waiter came up to her. She was tall and pretty. She was holding a menu in her hand. She bent down and asked, What would Miss Luo like to drink? Luo Qingshan froze for a moment and glanced at Gong Yubai beside her. His eyebrows moved slightly, and his voice was as cold as water as he slowly said, She wants a cup of cappuccino, and give me a cup of black coffee. Yes, young master. Young master? After the beautiful lady left their line of sight, Luo Qingshan looked at Gong Yubai and asked seriously, Did you bring a family member? Yes. Isn't it inappropriate to bring family members to battle? How many did you bring? 1. Only 1? And in the next second, he reached out to touch her hair and said, It's you. Why did she suddenly feel like she was being flirted with out of the blue? Moreover, it was done so naturally. Chapter 2539. After all, this was a hotel. If Gong Yubai hadn't brought her in, why would she be dressed so formally? Because this hotel belongs to my family. Gong Yubai leaned back on the sofa leisurely, his deep eyes sparkling. He was so good-looking. What? Luo Qingshan looked at him in confusion. She lowered her voice and said, So your family owns a hotel, a 5-star hotel, as expected of a rich family. Little did she know that in the next second, Gong Yubai glanced to the side with a proud look in his eyes. He looked at her and said, Of course not. He didn't want to hide it, but it would be too deliberate to say it out loud. Luo Qingshan wanted to ask more, but the press conference for youth had already started on the 1st floor. Welcome to the press conference for youth. This circle is very small. Everyone who is here today is a friend. I also hope that when you ask questions later, you will give me some face and be merciful with your words. The host opened simply through the microphone with a smile on his face. This was the usual opening of a press conference. There were some questions that could be asked and some that couldn't. Everyone knew, but this time youth was deeply involved in public opinion, which meant that it was at the heart of the storm. Plus, there were rumors everywhere. It was impossible for the reporters to ask questions that weren't sharp. In the next second, our four main actors and director shall and will be on the stage. Clap, 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 clap. There was applause. It wasn't thunderous, but it wasn't rare either. Gu Fanfan was the first to introduce herself. She wore a pink sweater and a white pleated skirt. She looked very girly, but even with such exquisite makeup, one could still feel that she wasn't a beauty. She could only be considered a pretty girl from a humble family. Hello everyone, my name is Gu Fanfan. I am very happy to be able to meet all of you on this cold winter day. I hope that everyone can continue to support me. I believe that I will be able to bring you even better works. Her face was full of smiles, but her fingers that gripped the microphone were slightly white. Luo Qingshun, who was sitting on the second floor, couldn't help but mutter. She said she can't say anything official. Why is she so nervous? How much does our little girl dislike Gu Fanfan? Gong Yubai sighed softly and looked at her with a slightly jealous tone. It can't be because of some people, right? Don't tease me. Luo Qingshun pretended to be angry as she stretched her waist and said, I don't want to have anything to do with a scumbag. In her eyes, if her name was placed next to Genie Xuan's name, she would feel extremely embarrassed. Fool, I believe you. Gong Yubai looked at the scene on the first floor and said, After all, some people will soon welcome the end of the world. Some hubbub was about to arrive, and it was gradually approaching without them knowing. At this moment, Gu Fanfan's heart was filled with pride. Although Xiao and didn't treat her well in the end, she was still the female lead, so she still gave her the exposure she deserved. In the past 2 days, the number of people who followed her on Weibo had also increased. Gradually, she felt that she could be compared with Luo Qingshun in her heart. Sister Fanfan, you're amazing. The young girl who played the second female lead saw her step back and said with a smile, You're not nervous for such a big scene. Even I'm nervous. Due to her relationship with Luo Qingshun, the actress who played the role of the daughter was not some A-list or A-list movie star. She was just a small actress, but she was still quite humble. Chapter 2540. Actually, she didn't feel that she had suffered much. She was already very lucky to be able to act as a couple with the person she liked in her first scene as the female lead. Although Luo Qingshun had interfered midway, it didn't affect her original intention. In her world, she didn't forget her original intention to achieve success. She felt that she had never changed. She got the role based on her own ability. Today, she was able to stand here at the press conference because she had taken one step at a time. She was strong, motivated, and felt that she was good enough, but she was still working hard. It sounds very hard. The girl smiled again and didn't say anything else. After the introduction of all the main actors, it was time for the Q&A session. The male reporter sitting in the first row stood up and asked, Miss Gu Fanfan, did you snatch the role of Xia Qi from Luo Qingshun? Hiss. Everyone at the scene sucked in a breath of cold air, but the more experienced reporters all seemed very regretful. Not being the first to ask such a good question would have a certain impact on the release of the article. Gu Fanfan's face was slightly pale, but in the next second, she picked up the microphone firmly and looked at the male reporter. I've explained this question many times. At that time, Luo Qingshun didn't want to play this role, so I went to the audition. Many people here know that she left first. Xiaoan frowned, obviously not satisfied with Gu Fanfan's answer. Now, the whole youth crew was at the center of the storm. No one could suppress the public opinion in a short time. At this time, the smartest answer was, Sorry, I won't answer questions unrelated to the drama. I don't know if she's naive or stupid when she insists on explaining and even mentioning the words Luo Qingshun. Then, Miss Gu Fanfan, I heard that you were the third party between Luo Qingshun and Genie Xuan. You used despicable means to intervene between them. Is that true? This time, it was a woman who asked the question. She looked elegant and dignified. Her words hit the nail on the head. Gu Fanfan's expression turned even uglier. She replied almost instantly, We've always been single. After meeting each other, we started to have feelings for each other. It has nothing to do with her. If you have any questions about this, I won't answer. At this moment, Gong Yubai, who was sitting on the second floor, took a sip of coffee and said, I don't like this question either. Mr. Genie Xuan, do you have anything to add? When the reporter saw that Gu Fanfan had stopped talking, he directed the question at Genie Xuan. The scene became particularly awkward, but fortunately, Genie Xuan had some experience. He took the microphone and said with a chuckle, We are all just friends. In order to make a better film, we chose a more suitable person. There is no relationship problem. Hiss! Another gasp of cold air was heard. Jean Yishuan's words completely cut off the relationship between him and Gu Fanfan. In that case, did their love for the past 4 months go to waste? Did they think that the audience was blind, or did they want to pierce through the hearts of the shippers? At the same time, Gu Fanfan looked at Jean Yishuan in surprise. This scene had been captured by countless cameras. Chapter 2541. At this moment, everyone's eyes were on Jean Yishuan and Gu Fanfan. The atmosphere was extremely awkward. The reporters didn't hold back their questions at all. Instead, their questions became sharper and more direct. But then again, it made sense. Most people were just here to watch the show and didn't mind blowing things up. Gu Fanfan bit her lips and looked at Jean Yishuan with a pleading look. Jean Yishuan didn't seem to want to look at her. He looked away and said coldly, Everyone, please ask questions about the plot. Director Xiao saw that the situation wasn't right and added, Yes, yes. This is the press conference of youth. We also want to let everyone know more about the characters and the development of the plot. Then, Director, is it true that you use some tricks to adjust the schedules of youth and time? Xiao's face immediately darkened. He looked at the reporter very seriously and said, These rumors are all false. Wise people don't believe in rumors. Please don't be a fool. After all, he was a director who had been through a lot. He knew how to deal with reporters who didn't know what to say. The reporter was obviously stunned. The host saw this and immediately interrupted. The Q&A session ends here. Now, let's take a look at the longest trailer of Youth. Please look at the big screen. The host expressed that she was also in a difficult position. This was the first time she had encountered such an awkward situation. It didn't feel like a press conference at all. It felt like a new crusade. He was also considered half an industry insider. Youth did have some tricks up their sleeves. Although everyone pretended not to know, they more or less knew about it in secret. If this happened in any other industry, it would be considered immoral. But in the entertainment industry, it didn't matter. It was just a pity that such a good film like Time was suppressed by Lychee TV despite its high popularity and the addition of Godyu. The next second, the big screen turned on. A beautiful and youthful campus scene came into view. Coupled with the relaxing music, it was as if they were back in school. But the quiet atmosphere only lasted for 5 seconds. Then, there was a video of an office scene. The person who appeared in the video was none other than the son of Lychee TV's shareholder, Chun Fong. Then, there was a conversation between two men. Director Xiao, did you help him solve the problem? Yes, young master. Everything has been taken care of. This time, they gave you a lot of gifts. Settle it nicely. Yes. Also, schedule the release of Time at the climax of Youth. That way, even if there's a god reigning, it might not be a good premiere. Does it need to go through the board of directors? No need. My dad has 30% of the shares, so I can make the decision. The camera wouldn't move. It was probably a pinhole camera that recorded the entire process and then edited an excerpt from it. Although there wasn't much dialogue, the amount of information was enough to make everyone sigh. At this moment, the faces of everyone standing on the stage became very ugly. Gu Fanfan's originally smiling face instantly stiffened. At the same time, Luo Qingshun, who was sitting on the second floor, looked at Gong Yubai and said, You're too awesome. Imperial God is worthy of being called Imperial God. Chapter 2542. Without a doubt, Gong Yubai's actions would force the entire cast of Youth out of the entertainment industry. This was forcing them to leave the entertainment industry. She suddenly felt that angering a powerful man wasn't that scary. Angering a black-bellied powerful man was truly scary. At this moment, the entire press conference fell into a dead silence. It wasn't until the image on the big screen dimmed and the light from the incandescent bulbs shone on everyone's heads that they seemed to wake up from a nightmare. Unfortunately, they woke up from a nightmare. The host seemed very embarrassed, and the reporters on the stage began to ask questions at once. Director Xiao, did you give the person in charge of Lychee a gift? Can you tell us how much it was? Does the entire cast know about this? Or is it only the director? Don't you feel guilty about oppressing time? Will youth still be screened after this matter is exposed? Director Xiao, do you want to say a few words? Wave after wave of questions left everyone on stage at a loss. The host hurriedly raised the volume of the microphone and said, "Everyone, please calm down. Today's press conference will temporarily enter the resting stage. After verifying the authenticity of the video, we will announce it to everyone." Xiaoan's face was completely black. At this moment, he was more nervous than anyone else, but he had to pretend to be calm. His premonition was correct. Someone wanted to mess with him. If he guessed correctly, it was the Royal Lincoln sedan at the alley the other day. Who was it? Who was it that stood up for Luo Qingchen? Who was so meticulous? He didn't say a word and was about to leave the stage. Unexpectedly, a gentleman stopped him. "Director Xiao, why are you in such a hurry? Stay for 2 more minutes and let me finish." Luo Qingchen, who was sitting on the second floor, looked at Gong Yubai again. His expression was calm, but there was a sharp light in his eyes. "Don't tell me this person was also arranged by you? How many things was this mysterious man hiding from her?" Even she was pleasantly surprised. How shocked must the people standing on the stage be? The show is just about to start. Gong Yubai took a sip of his coffee and sneered. Who are you?" Xiaoan was obviously flustered and exasperated as he was stopped by a brat. But with so many reporters taking pictures of him, he couldn't just use force. "It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is what I'm going to say next." Inmu smiled and said, "This is a message from our young master." He gently touched his ear. There was a resplendent diamond earring and a small pendant with the word "In" engraved on it. It was especially dazzling. Xiaoan was stunned for a moment. His hands and feet were cold as he said softly, "You are, oh my God, Soundwood, one of the 6 gentlemen of the Gus kingdom." The king of the richest country in the world was not only the richest man in the world, but he also had the most diamonds in the world. The Gus group Prince Gamusta had a total of 6 bodyguards, and Inmu was one of them. According to the old saying, martial arts are strong, but the depth is unfathomable. It seems that you don't have bad taste. Inmu curved her lips into a smile. Her moon-white hair looked especially beautiful. He waved the 23 shares transfer agreement in his hand and stood on the stage. "I'm sure no one knows who I am. Inmu, Inmu, Inmu." The deafening voice sounded as if Inmu was an international star. Chapter 2543. "It seems that everyone knows who I am," Inmu chuckled. "From today onwards, the Gus Group will acquire the TVs of the top 23 online platforms in the country. The rest will remain unchanged, but the center position will only broadcast You're More Amazing Than Time." Inmu didn't speak much, but his smile was very charming. It was so charming that people didn't dare to look directly into his light blue eyes. Hiss! Everyone present sucked in a breath of cold air. The Gus Group acquired the top 23 online broadcasting platforms in the country just to broadcast time? Oh my God, did I hear wrongly? You didn't hear wrongly. I've always heard the international news mention how powerful the Gus Group is. Seeing is believing. Does the 23 platforms include Lychee TV? According to the rankings, it should be. Ahem. The next second, Inmu cleared his throat and said, "The Gus Group acquired Lychee TV, but due to the poor management of the TV, we have declared it bankrupt." What? Xiaoan looked at Inmu in disbelief. His whole person was in a daze. Even Gu Fanfan and Genie Xuan were surprised. If Lychee TV went bankrupt, then wouldn't their drama be? I've conveyed the message that the young master asked me to convey. The extremely gentlemanly Inmu walked toward Genie Xuan. He stopped and whispered in his ear, "Our young master has a message for you." He turned his eyes slightly, his eyes cold, but there was a smile on his lips. He looked at Genie Xuan and said, Miss Qing Shun is destined to be the princess of the Gus group, and you don't even deserve to be a servant of the Gus group. Princess. Gu Fanfan, who was standing on the side, happened to hear this. At this moment, her mind was blank. She originally thought that she could stand on the same stage as Luo Qingshun, but when this man called Emu said the words princess of the Gus group, even if she was stupid, she should have guessed Gong Yubai's identity. The only prince of the Gus kingdom who had only lived in the world imagination for 20 years, Gus Stui. His father was a king, and his mother was a Chinese. All the drama seemed to have come to an end at this moment. The entire press conference was plunged into the biggest scandal in the history of the entertainment industry. Bribery, oppression of peers, unscrupulous means, and all kinds of unbearable comments pushed the entire crew of youth to the forefront of the storm. At that time, Luo Qingshun finished the coffee in her hand in one gulp. Then, she looked at Gong Yubai, who was sitting beside her, and said indifferently, I didn't expect this. Knight Prince Gumashu, you didn't even tell me this. My identity is special. Out of fear of being kidnapped and assassinated, I've never shown myself as a prince. Gong Yubai looked at her brows and gently patted her head. I'm sorry. Why are you telling our little lass so late? But Luo Qingshan frowned and said with some worry, now that everyone can guess your identity, isn't it very dangerous? She suddenly felt that she shouldn't blame Gong Yubai for not telling her his true identity. After all, the richer a person was, the more likely they were to encounter danger. Moreover, he was not only a member of the royal family, but also the son of the richest man in the world. Chapter 2544. Gong Yubai. Although Lord Yushun's words sounded like vulgar words of love, it would be a lie to say that she wasn't moved. Imperial God is equal to Gong Yubai, but not equal to Gumastui. Gong Yubai said softly, however, if Gumustu wants to marry the princess consort, I must raise a toast to the whole world. Is he proposing? The host is so romantic. This is the first time the system has heard such a proposal. The system is so girly. The system has a girly heart. Are you kidding me? At this moment, Luo Qingshun only felt her face and ears turn red, but she didn't forget to retort to the system. Actually, this was the first time she had heard of such a proposal. It was very special, but also very warm. So the Prince of Gus is so good at saying sweet nothings. Luo Qingshun touched her ear and said, have you said this to other girls before? Before I met you, there were no girls in my world. Gong Yubai walked in front of her. Seeing that she was about to get up, he slowly pressed her hand down and knelt on one knee. Isn't this proposal more formal? In the next second, he slowly took out a crystal diamond box from his pocket. The small diamonds on the box formed the word Qing. Opening the box, there was a crown-shaped diamond ring inside. Every diamond had the word Qing written on it. It was exquisite to the extreme. You marry me. Gong Yubai looked at her affectionately. She was the only one in his starry eyes. He had already thought about the proposal. He was just waiting for an opportunity to reveal his identity without hiding anything from her. As for Luo Qingshun, she could completely feel Gong Yubai's love for her. He had concealed his identity for more than 20 years. Just because he wanted to marry her, he did not hesitate to face all kinds of dangers in the future. All right, she nodded without hesitation. The moment the ring was put on her ring finger, he picked her up like a little doll. The hug was warm, and he smiled happily. The next morning, all the headlines were occupied by the words, Ancient Stew Knight. He was the son of the richest man in the world, the prince of the Gus Kingdom, the young master of the Gus Corporation, and the national idol of the entertainment industry. So many identities, but it was actually the same person. This kind of explosive news shocked everyone. Of course, Yu Shun's Weibo fans almost doubled. Although he had never posted anything on Weibo, he had one of the most fans on Weibo. Other than this piece of news, the most interesting news was the fact that the entire production crew of Youth had bribed and tried to pull strings behind the scenes. No matter which platform, they were scolded badly. Among them, Lychee TV was exposed for maliciously tampering with ratings and many other immoral acts. Everyone kicks a man when he's down. This was probably the feeling he had right now. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for the teen idol drama Youth to be aired. Everyone in the crew was implicated in the conspiracy, which became the biggest scandal in the entertainment industry. Gong Yubai used an extreme method to solve this problem. Although it was more inconvenient for him to go out after announcing his identity, he didn't seem to care at all because he was more willing to spend every day with his princess consort. The wedding was set for 3 months later. In the meantime, she had one more thing to do, and that was her mother. Gu Fanfan's mother, who had a mother-daughter relationship with Gu Fanfan, returned 3 days later. Chapter 25:45. 3 days later, in the morning. In the Panamera, Luo Qingshan sat in the passenger seat while Gong Yubai drove her back to her villa. In fact, after coming to this world, she didn't go home often, but her kind father always went to see her. Although he was a workaholic, he was also a good person. These days, he called her desperately and asked her to come home. A daughter was always a father's favorite. No matter who it was, they would feel inexplicably uncomfortable when they got married like this. Ding dong, young miss is back. Yes. Is Dad here? Master is in the study. The butler looked at her excitedly and said, after waiting for so long, young miss is finally back. The original owner's father was called Luo Xiao, and her mother was called Yi Xiao. She had an impression of this information when she received the original owner's memory. She and Gu Fanfan were actually half-sisters. Of course, Gu Fanfan didn't know this, and neither did Yi Xiao. So I've married a rich young miss. Along the way, Gong Yubai didn't forget to tease her. He had known about Luo Xiao for a long time, but he didn't expect to fall in love with his daughter. Of course, Luo Qingshan smiled and said, Our lord, you shouldn't be nervous. Yes, a little. Gong Yubai smiled and said, but I'm full of confidence. She walked up to the second floor and knocked on the door of the study. After hearing Luo Qingshan's voice, the originally dull person instantly ran over to open the door. Oh, whose daughter is this? She's so beautiful. Whose big daddy is this? He's so handsome. Luo Qingshan responded to Luo Zhao's words and even made a rhyme. No, you can't say that in front of the Lord you. Daddy is old and not handsome. Hello, uncle. Just call me you. As the son of the world's richest man, Luo Xiao was quite satisfied with his humble appearance. Luo Qingshan also expressed that Gong Yubai was too good at pleasing adults. He had never said to others before, just call me you. Good. Daddy is so happy. Luo Xiao looked at the time and said, Your mother is about to get off the plane. I was going to pick her up, but she said she had a place to go. I didn't even know if you had the time to come back. Now, we can have a meal together. Speaking of Yi Xiao, the original owner had some indescribable feelings. Luo Qingshan felt the same. If she didn't treat her well, she had never rejected anything she wanted since she was young. However, it gave her the feeling that there was nothing else other than money. In addition, in the original owner's memories, after Yi Xiao recognized Gu Fanfan, she treated her 200% well. She had even brought her back to the Gu family at all costs to make it up to her. However, she had never thought that her other biological daughter had never received her love. Such a mother made Luo Qingshan bitterly disappointed. Even when she was pushed to the teeth of the storm because of the TV series, her mother had never called her or sent her a message. Where did she go? Luo Qingshan pursed her lips, a faint light flashing through her eyes. Chapter 25:46. Both Luo Xiao and Luo Qingshan knew very well whether Yi Xiao had gone to the duty-free shop to buy things or not. In their hearts, they knew where she had gone. However, the father and daughter chose not to say anything in order not to make each other worry. Today was the day Gu Fanfan's biological father, Gu Meng, was released from prison. Okay, then let's go to the hotel first, Dad. Luo Qingshan touched her stomach and said, I'm hungry. Little greedy cat. Luo Xiao tapped her nose and said, How dare you be so delicate in front of you? Be careful that he's afraid of you and doesn't want you anymore. Uncle, I don't dare. Gong Yubai smiled humbly and said, Qingshan will always be a little princess. She's delicate and cute. You're saying that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Why do I see that she's full of problems? Although Luo Xiao said this, he looked at his daughter dotingly. After all, he only had this one daughter, and he used all his strength to love her. It was almost noon when they arrived at the hotel, but Yi Xiao still hadn't come. Luo Xiao called her many times, but there was no response. Luo Xiao's expression wasn't too good. We called her for the 10th time. She finally picked up. Why do you keep calling me? Don't you know that I'm busy? Yi Xiao's impatient voice and the sound of the wind came from the other end of the phone. It's not Xiao, Luo Xiao explained in a good mood. Didn't we agree to have dinner together today? When did we agree? I just wanted to tell you that I'm returning to China today. Yi Xiao's tone was cold, as if talking to Luo Xiao was torture. Xiao, okay, stop talking. Yi Xiao said coldly. We're both adults. You and I both know some things. Our daughter is one thing, and we are the other. Luo Xiao seemed to have sensed that she wanted to say something. His beautiful eyes instantly lost their luster, and he didn't even know how to respond. Until the next second, Yi Xiao said, Let's get a divorce. The room was very quiet, so when Yi Xiao said this, everyone present heard it. Gong Yubai looked at Luo Qingshan worriedly, but he didn't expect her to be so calm. It was as if she didn't care about the relationship between her parents. Luo Xiao wanted to say something, but the phone had already hung up. There was only a do sound, but Luo Xiao didn't say anything. Luo Qingshan poured a pot of tea for Luo Xiao. Dad, drink some tea to calm down. Your daughter. Did you hear that just now? Luo Xiao's expression turned even uglier. She felt that she had let her daughter down. She had worked so hard, but she couldn't give her a warm home. Yes, there Luo Xiao's father not. Luo Sido Dai was twos to the half to two to the death. Qing Chun. Gong Yubai knit his brows. He clearly felt that she was saying this on purpose, but he didn't know why she would say this. Daughter, actually, I know a lot of things better than you, Dad. Luo Qingshan pursed her lips and said, That's it. Let's eat. Luo Xiao looked at Luo Qingshan for a long time, and the dimness in her eyes gradually turned into love. He had used all his strength to dote on this daughter of his, and only hoped that she would be well. As for his mother, he used all his strength to love her deeply. Chapter 25:47. After the meal, Luo Qingshan went to the supermarket to buy some daily necessities and snacks for Luo Xiao, and went back. Before leaving, Luo Xiao patted Luo Qingshan's head with fatherly love as he said, My good daughter, it's enough to have your father. Father's happiness is the most important. Luo Qingshan pursed her lips and said with trembling eyebrows, You've met someone better. For Luo Qingshan, she was very indifferent to many things, especially when it came to her mother. On the way home, Gong Yubai wanted to ask her several times. After all, he couldn't figure out why Luo Qingshan was so indifferent. Did you do something to your mother? He thought for a moment, but still asked. After all, she was already his wife. He didn't need to be so tactful if he wanted to care about her. S-class prison. Let's go. Prison. Yes. If she remembered correctly, Gu Meng was released from prison at 2 o'clock this afternoon. She remembered this time very clearly because it was the most painful time of her life for the original owner. Gong Yubai's Panamera slowly stopped not far from the prison. There was a Porsche parked in front of it. That was Yi Xiao's car. Luo Qingshan remembered it very clearly. When the original owner was young, she especially wanted to please Yi Xiao and play with her more. Once, she got into the back seat of her Porsche. At that time, Yi Xiao came to the prison to see her childhood sweetheart, Gu Meng. She is my mother. Luo Qingshan rested her chin on her right hand and looked at the car window. She is waiting for the man she loves the most in her life to be released from prison. Gong Yubai didn't say anything. With his IQ, he had already guessed what was going on. However, the truth was more melodramatic than he had guessed. By the way, she is not only my mother, but also Gu Fanfan's mother. What? Gong Yubai, who had always been calm and composed, finally looked at Luo Qingshan in disbelief when she said those words. And the man she is waiting for is Gu Fanfan's biological father, Luo Qingshan said with a cold smile. but the two of them don't know about this. But maybe we'll find out soon. According to the original plot, after Gu Fanfan became popular, people began to investigate her background. Finally, he found out by accident that she was actually the daughter of a rich man. However, this was a story for another day. She just wanted to see Gu Meng. Oh right, she still wanted him dead. No, a life worse than death might be more suitable for him. She hated Yi Xiao and Gu Meng. At 2 in the afternoon, Gu Meng was released from prison on time. The moment he appeared, Yi Xiao rushed forward and hugged him tightly. No matter how dirty he was, she was not afraid of anything. Gong Yubai, if I do something that makes you feel despicable in the future, will you be disappointed in me? As she said this, she looked at Gong Yubai with a smile. Little did she know that he only reached out and patted her head. You don't have to do what you want to do yourself. Luo Qingshun thought that Gong Yubai was just spoiling her and saying it casually, but she didn't expect Gong Yubai to really do it. Things were unpredictable, and Luo Qingshun couldn't completely recover from her shock. On the first day after Gu Meng was released from prison, Yi Xiao divorced Luo Xiao. The next day, Yi Xiao packed all her luggage and left the Luo family. She didn't even see Luo Qingshun one last time and went straight to Gu Meng. On the 7th day, they were together. Gu Meng was involved in an international drug trafficking organization. Chapter 2548. Because she was connected to an international drug trafficking organization, all the money in Yi Xiao's account was frozen by the bank. She was no longer Mrs. Luo, and no one was willing to help her and a drug dealer. At this moment, she remembered her daughter. She wanted to bail Gu Meng out. But because of the seriousness of the case, the bail amount was very high. The moment she received Yi Xiao's call, she thought of Gong Yubai. Even if Gu Meng had evil intentions, he wouldn't be stupid enough to sell drugs as soon as he was released from prison. After all, Yi Xiao had a strong family background now. She could support him for the rest of his life. He didn't need to do such a risky thing. So, there was only one possibility. This was a trap set up by Gong Yubai. When Luo Qingshun arrived, Yi Xiao was already in tears. She went forward and grabbed her hand. Qingqing, do me a favor and pay the bail first. This person is Mom's friend. Gu Meng. Luo Qingshun smiled coldly and glanced at the person behind the iron bars of the detention center. 18 years ago, he was imprisoned for a malicious arson case. I didn't expect him to be imprisoned again after just a few days. Her tone and every word she said were filled with extreme mockery. Her voice was neither loud nor soft, but it was sonorous and powerful. Little girl, what are you talking about? Do you want to die? Gu Meng curled his lips and looked at her fiercely. He naturally knew who Luo Qingshun was. She was that man's daughter. His wife had slept with another man for so many years and even gave birth to a bastard child. He naturally didn't want to see Luo Qingshun. Hey, what are you shouting about? The police officer immediately stopped Gu Meng and looked at him. It seems like you don't want to be bailed out at all. Comrade Xiao Gu, take him to jail. Wait, don't take him to jail yet. Yi Xiao was shocked. She turned to Luo Qingshun and said, help Mom pay the money first. I'll return it to you in a few days. Uncle Gu is a very important friend of your mother. He was wronged. Wronged? Luo Qingshun looked at Yi Xiao and sneered. Mom, do you know? Drug trafficking is punishable by death. Mother of asterisk cur, don't curse me, you idiot. Gu Meng was still full of vulgarities. He stared at Luo Qingshun and scolded her. Brother Meng, you should speak less. Yi Xiao obviously didn't want him to quarrel with Luo Qingshun because she was afraid that he wouldn't be able to get bail. Little did he know, Luo Qingshun shrugged indifferently and said, I'm waiting for the day you're sentenced to death. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and walked towards the door without hesitation. Yi Xiao rushed out in anger and raised her hand to slap him, but he grabbed her firmly. Child, why are you like this? Is it that hard for me to ask you for some money? Luo Qingshun took her wrist and forcefully flung it away as she calmly said, You're not worthy of being my mother. Before taking revenge on Gu Meng, your daughter's reputation had already been ruined, and she's dancing in the ballroom right now. Because countless people scolded him, Gu Fanfan had already left the entertainment industry. Because her face would be recognized no matter where she went, she would be scolded. She couldn't even find an ordinary job. In the end, she could only go to the ballroom and dance on the stage with heavy makeup. From time to time, she would be harassed by clients. However, she was a white lotus that grew out of the mud and was untainted. Even in a dirty place, she could still retain her clean nature. Even if she was harassed by clients, she treated it as a test in life. What? Chapter 2549. Yi Xiao looked at Luo Qingshun in disbelief. She thought that her daughter didn't know anything, but in fact she didn't know anything. But this wasn't the scariest thing. The scariest thing was that she knew everything, but she was extremely calm. It was as if everything was under her control. That's all I have to say. There are some things I don't want to say anymore. Luo Qingshun looked at Gu Meng through the iron gate and smiled coldly. Since you've chosen the person you want to choose, don't come back to find Dad in the future. As my daughter, you actually said such things. Yi Xiao was obviously very angry, and her eyes became especially sharp. Yi Xiao felt especially unfamiliar with her biological daughter in front of her. Or perhaps she had never been familiar with her. I'm not your daughter. Your daughter is someone else. Luo Qingshun shrugged and smiled helplessly. Unfortunately, I don't intend to tell you who she is. With that, she turned around and left without looking back. She felt inexplicably sad, and her eyes were slightly red. This was the first time she had felt this way since entering the plane. Facing her biological mother, she had always tried her best to protect her, but now she was so cold and distant. As for Yi Xiao, she couldn't take revenge like Gu Meng, but she didn't want to say anything more. Since that was the life she had chosen, she would let her continue on her own. As for Gu Fanfan, it didn't matter to her whether Yi Xiao acknowledged her or not. A month later, the international drug trafficking case was officially solved. Gu Meng was sentenced to death for possessing 3,000 grams of marijuana. Yi Xiao had said this many times and pooled together millions of dollars before the High People's Court sentenced him to death with a reprieve. She had waited for so many years, and finally, Gu Meng was released from prison. Unfortunately, being released from prison was only the beginning, not the end. Since that day, Luo Qingshun had never seen her mother again. Even if she borrowed money, Yi Xiao didn't look for her. Although this did not cause her to feel any fluctuations in her heart, she would still be slightly distracted from time to time. Did she not handle it well enough? Was there still a chance for Yi Xiao and Luo Xiao to get back together? Could it be that if she hadn't been so resolute, there would still be hope? What is my little girl thinking about? Gong Yubai gently raised his right hand and pointed between her eyebrows. Let me guess. Stop guessing. You're the instigator. Luo Qingshun sipped a mouthful of juice and chuckled. Why do I have to think about those annoying things during this pleasant afternoon tea? Are you blaming me? No. Luo Qingshun decisively shook her head and said, what you did was the same as what I thought. Luo Qingshun had never felt that Gong Yubai had done anything wrong. She just wanted Gu Meng to die. Even if Gong Yubai did not know the fate of the original owner of this parallel universe, he still helped her. Gu Meng had done a lot of bad things. When he was in prison, he had forced many people to their deaths. Although he did not kill them personally, he could not get away with it. She was not standing on a moral high ground to punish a bad person, but she still felt that he deserved to die. However, in the end, Yi Xiao's efforts had delayed his death. I heard that it's only a delayed death. Do you want to go further? Gong Yubai took a sip of coffee, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. Chapter 2550. In the end, Luo Qingshun didn't plan to care about Gu Meng's affairs anymore. However, she heard that he didn't have a good time in prison. He was beaten up by the seniors over and over again and almost lost his life. After the death sentence was life imprisonment. Yi Xiao's heart sank. She knew that there was no hope of seeing Gu Meng again in this life. He was old, and doing crazy things once was enough. After a few visits, she was tired. Suddenly, she wanted to find a stable life. But before that, another person appeared beside her. She was in her early 30s and didn't know how to dress. She was a very quiet woman. This woman was called Yin Man. She was the deputy director of the Human Resources Department of Luo's enterprise. She was very low-key. The first time Luo Qingchen knew that it was because she had something to ask of her, it was the night of a typhoon. She had made an appointment with Luo Xiao to have dinner together, but Luo Xiao was delayed by an emergency meeting. Luo Qingchen met Yin Man while waiting in the VIP lounge. She was wearing a white collar suit with curly hair and light makeup. "You must be Chairman Luo's daughter." "Yes, and you are?" "My name is Yin Man. I'm an employee of the Human Resources Department." Yin Man carefully put down a small medicine box and said, "Chairman Luo has been coughing recently. It seems to be a bit serious, so I want to get some medicine. But my mother is in the hospital with acute appendicitis. I have to go there right now. Can I trouble you?" "Sure." Luo Qingchen smiled and nodded. "I'll help you give it to my father. Thank you for your kindness." "It's my pleasure." Yin Man shook her head. "Chairman Luo has given me a new lease on life. This is nothing." "Who said so?" Luo Qingchen patted the medicine box gently. "The thought is the most important." In fact, she liked Yin Man very much. She felt that she was a good girl at first sight. A person's tone and words could be deceiving, but it was difficult to deceive people with one's eyes. For someone like her, who had seen countless people, she still had a good eye. However, she was too introverted. When they returned home that night, Luo Qingchen gossiped about Yin Man. Luo Xiao thought for a long time and said while eating rice, "I remember that when the company was very busy some time ago, she was the last one to go home after working overtime every night. Later, when she was free, she was the last one to go home again." "Wow, you're working so hard." Sure enough, her judgment was not wrong. "Yes," Luo Xiao smiled and said, "but it's useless to work hard. Although the company is transparent, there's still some ways of the world. She works so hard. If the senior she works with want to step on her, there's nothing she can do." And then? Luo Qingchen felt that she was fascinated by her father's story and wanted to continue listening to it. And then? Luo Xiao thought for a moment and said, "I asked the secretary to make an exception and promote her to deputy director and dismiss the original deputy director. Is that the senior who stepped on her?" "Yes." "What a smart girl." Luo Qingchen pursed her lips, her eyes full of stars. And then? Nothing. Luo Xiao looked at her and said, "What's wrong? Today, you sent medicine to Dad and gossiped about Dad's company." Chapter 2551. "What nonsense!" Luo Xiao glanced at her and said, "You're even introducing someone to your father. If you miss a good girl, don't blame me for not reminding you." Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and chuckled. "Besides, you're old. She's a young and beautiful girl." Old. Luo Xiao's originally handsome face suddenly became serious. He pretended to look at her seriously and said, "Do you know that a man stands at 40? Do you know that a man at 40 is a flower?" "No, doubt. Is it?" Luo Xiao even emphasized the last 3 words to express the anger in his heart. "Dad, you're right. Of course your father is right. This is true, but you're 45. Miss Yin Man is only 32. Luo Qingchen said with an innocent face. "You're more than a round behind her." You. Luo Xiao put down his bowl and chopsticks and looked at her. "Do you think Dad isn't charming anymore? More or less? If you're old, you can only find someone old. In addition, you're busy. Who would like you?" Luo Qingchen said that her provocation was just right. She just didn't know if her father would fall for it. Little did she know that he would fall for it in minutes. He patted his chest and said, "Dad will show you the charm of a middle-aged man." Okay. Let's wait for the romantic feelings to spread in the Luo Corporation." Luo Qingchen didn't see the story with her own eyes. She only knew that Luo Xiao acted out the novel's overbearing CEO falls in love with me in the company. He definitely took down Yin Man, who he already liked. Although she didn't see the process with her own eyes, she saw the ending. It was a familiar Porsche parked at the entrance of the Luo Corporation. Yi Xiao was waiting for Luo Xiao to get off work, but in the end, it was Luo Xiao and Yin Man who came in pairs. Okay. Her car was parked not far away, and she saw this scene with her own eyes. He knew that his infatuated father had also seen it. This time, he finally didn't abandon his self-esteem and walked towards the Porsche. Luo Qingxin knew that it was right or wrong for their daughter to want them to separate, but she knew that she didn't think that such a decision was wrong. Some people would never come back once they missed them. Moreover, Luo Xiao had worked hard for so many years, but she still hadn't won Yi Xiao's heart. This proved that even if they forced themselves to be together in the future, it wouldn't last long. Perhaps this was already the best ending. The story that followed. Time passed quickly, and before she knew it, it was her wedding day. Gong Yubai was a man of his word. The wedding was broadcasted live on at least one channel in every country. He really did it. The whole world raised a glass for him. On the day of the wedding, Yi Xiao didn't come. She only sent someone to send a gift and a greeting card. In addition to the general blessings, there was another sentence on the greeting card. Congratulations on your wedding. If possible, can you tell me where your sister is? Any contact number will do. I just want to see her from afar. Luo Qingxun threw the greeting card and the gift into the trash can. Yin Man, who was standing behind her, was shocked. She hurriedly picked up the gift from the trash can and said indifferently, "I'll help you put it away. Although she's still your mother. She's not worthy." Luo Qingxun shook her head and smiled bitterly. Birds of a feather flock together. Perhaps we're not suitable to be mother and daughter. The mother and daughter relationship in the world was a blessing accumulated over 1,000 years. Unfortunately, her mother didn't care about her existence. In the next few years, they never met again. It wasn't until one day, when she drove her Maserati past an intersection, that she happened to see a mother and daughter quarreling. She took a closer look and saw that it was Gu Fanfan and Yi Xiao. She had almost forgotten the contents of the quarrel. She only knew that they looked very ugly and their words were very hurtful. It turned out that it was true that distance made the heart grow fonder. Once they got along for a long time, many things would fall apart, such as Gu Fanfan and Yi Xiao. But what did their fate have to do with her? She smiled faintly, stepped on the accelerator, and left the intersection, never looking back. Chapter 2552. Don't ask me why I love you. Don't ask me where you are. I love you because there is no other you in this world. Gong Yubai, I am a direct and decisive person. I am cold and black-bellied. No one can change the outcome of the things I care about. No one. The Gus Kingdom is the richest country in the world because 90% of the stones in our country are diamonds. My father is very busy, but he loves my mother deeply. Ever since she married Gus, my mother missed her homeland very much. Therefore, she taught me Chinese when I was young. My Chinese is better than my English. Being in such a position, although the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, there are still disadvantages. There are many people who want to assassinate me in this world. There are people who hate me and people who don't. Those who don't hate me just want me to reincarnate. But how can I let them do as they wish? From a young age, in addition to living a life of luxury, I have to learn survival skills. Movement, guns, martial arts, etc. These are not skills that I was born with, but skills that I've spent all my time practicing. My father told me that once I have learned enough, I can leave Gus. No one will see me, and I can give myself an identity. Gong Yubai is the identity I gave myself. When I first came to China, I stayed in a hotel for 3 months. That familiar nightmare kept bothering me, so I decided to do something shocking. I wanted to be an actor and interpret all the dreams in my heart. That movie Apocalypse 2150 was the only thing that moved me. I want to know if the scene in the dream was my previous life. I want to know who that girl was. Did I love her a lot? Is it because I love her so much that no one in the floating world has ever been able to enter my eyes? This doubt lingered in my heart for a long time. It was like a huge stone in my heart that I could not let go of, until I met a strange girl on the plane, and her pen fell at my feet. The moment our eyes met, the dream that had haunted me for my entire youth appeared in my mind. At that moment, my heart fiercely beat, and I could not stop it. There was an accident on the plane. I saw her calm and collected appearance, attracting everyone's attention. I admit that I was dazzling, but I suddenly felt that she was even more dazzling than me. But what really made my heart palpitate wasn't that time, but the villa in San Diego. She spoke of my dream personally, as if she had experienced it herself. It was so real. I knew that she was the one I had been looking for my entire life. Perhaps it wasn't love at first sight, but I was certain that even if I only liked her now, I would definitely let go of her. Perhaps I am such a person. I may appear calm on the surface, but I have already made a crazy decision in my heart. After I returned to China, I looked up all her information. Other than knowing that she was a popular young actress, he also knew that she had a fiancée named Jeannie Schwan. When he heard the news, he was instantly filled with gloomy emotions. They circled around his heart and did not dissipate for a long time. However, it was a good thing that they had already broken off the engagement. Although the outside world didn't know about it, it was still easy for me to find out. I gave her 3 scripts that would definitely be popular. Actually, I hoped that she would choose a sci-fi or disaster film. But she had chosen a teen film. Chapter 2553. This was why I felt that I had the potential to be evil. Yi Shiliang was suitable to play Lee Sahan in the entertainment industry. But it didn't mean that he was suitable to play a couple with her. After all, I didn't agree. Moreover, Li Yuan used to be our housekeeper before he became a director. Although he lived in another villa, he still respected me and always called me eldest young master. After I told Li Yuan, she was definitely the female lead, and there was no reason to overturn it. I don't know when it started, but I was used to treating her matters as my own. I even started to pay attention to those people who didn't like her. It was my suggestion that Li Yuan went to Stars Entertainment to choose the supporting role of Time. I knew that there were many people who didn't like her, and I also knew that there were many people who didn't like her. Since that's the case, I'll take this opportunity to let everyone know that the person I, Gong Yu Bai, like will never be bullied. They fought so hard for the supporting role, and she was definitely the main lead. At that time, I also decided that I wanted to play the male lead in Time, Lee Sahan. After all, she was my girl. How could I allow others to act with her? As expected, the development of the story seemed to follow the script I wrote. Everyone looked at me in disbelief and the jealousy in Jeannie Schwan's eyes. Not to mention anything else, I just felt good. Actually, I'm not a kind-hearted person. Hence, when I found out that she hated Gu Ming, I did something about him. I even said that I wanted him to die. This idea might sound evil, but I had to bear all the bad things alone. Even if I was struck by lightning, it had nothing to do with her. If there was one thing that made me the most serious in my life, it was when I knew that the production team of Youth had deliberately changed the time of our drama. I knew that I had to do something. That was something that I couldn't let them make a comeback. The entertainment industry was a complicated place. It could make you famous overnight, but it could also make you lose your reputation in an instant. I didn't wrong them, but they had to be responsible for what they did. Those who dared to do something to me, Gong Yu Bai, never had a good ending. I bought all the platforms and used the most expensive price. Although I spent a little more money, it was good that everything was settled before their press conference. I declared bankruptcy for Lychee TV. The so-called chairman's son, Chun Fong, came looking for me several times. In the end, he knelt on the ground and threatened me with death. I said to him, "Go to hell." Then, he left dejectedly. Some people, just by looking at their faces, could tell that they were afraid of death. If such a person could live to 100 years old, he would definitely not be willing to die at 99 years old. It was written on their faces, "I am very afraid of death." The days with her, from meeting each other to knowing each other to falling in love, every progression made my heart throb. In the end, it was a rainy night that allowed me to confirm my inner thoughts. The downpour seemed to be washing my inner thoughts, causing all the cells in my body to tremble. That was the first time in my life that I felt fear, real fear. Even on our golden wedding day, when we talked about it while sitting in the rocking chair, I could feel my heart beating violently. He was old and his heart was not good. He almost had a heart attack. Chapter 2554. I remember when she got off the plane, she called me. At the time, I was on the phone with my father, dealing with a very troublesome matter regarding an international contract. The people in charge of the international trade in each country were video conferencing. When she called me, it was my turn to speak. Seeing that the weather wasn't good, I was worried about her, but I still picked up her call. Little did I know, as soon as I picked up the phone, my heart dropped to the bottom. I heard the voice of the wretched man on the other side of the phone. I knew she was in danger. At that moment, I suddenly felt that my life was over. What international conference? What international contract? Nothing was important. I directly turned off the international video, mobilized all the forces in a city, and used the most accurate location to find her. The other side of the phone had already hung up. When I was sitting in the car, I felt my eyes turn red, and my heart was unspeakably afraid. I was afraid that this rain was a sign that I was going to lose her. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to save her. On the way, I thought a lot. I didn't tell her these thoughts even after we got married, but I could say them here. At that time, I had already prepared for the worst. It might be unbelievable. It might be like a fairy tale. But dying for love was a serious and solemn matter to me. A world without her would not have any meaning. I didn't want to wait for the next person to appear because it wasn't her, so there was no need to wait. When I arrived at the entrance of the alley, I saw a group of bruised men. I was very surprised, but my heart calmed down a lot. But calming down didn't mean that all my anger had disappeared. The people who wanted to bully her shouldn't live in this world. I put a silencer on the pistol and planned to take care of these people here. They knelt on the ground and begged for mercy, but it didn't arouse my pity at all, until she stood in front of me and asked me to let them go. At that moment, I could feel my eyes brimming with tears. I could feel my fingertips trembling. She stood there with an innocent and harmless face. Her eyes were as clear as when I first saw them. I was even a bit angry. I was so worried and scared, but she acted like nothing happened, standing there and blinking at me. But I thought she was cute. I couldn't say a word of reproach. I told her to come to me in a commanding tone. Then I hugged her tightly, using all my strength. At that time, I didn't know how she got out of danger. I only knew that from then on, no matter where she went, I sent people to follow her 24 hours a day to ensure her safety. Many years later, at the Taekwondo finals again, there was a friendly exchange between the champion and the audience, and the prize was a teddy bear. I watched her walk onto the stage, curl her lips under the spotlight, and take down the champion in less than 10 moves. Everyone gasped. I was stunned for a moment and then smiled knowingly. So she really was the doomsday hero who saved me in my previous life. I don't know if I'll be able to meet her in my next life, but in this life, she's the hero of my life. She's the one who saved my love. Perhaps no one would understand. Perhaps no one would understand. But I like her and love her more than I love myself. In my opinion, I love her even more than I do in that dream. The fallen leaves are the endless words of the season. You are the one I can't love enough in my life. I will protect your dreams with the years. Chapter 2555. Epilogue. After Luo Qingshan became the princess consort of the Gus Kingdom, she spent the rest of her life eating, drinking, and playing without any worries. Therefore, she was also known as the heroine who saved the universe in her previous life. She recalled the first time they met. She told Gong Yubai that she was the hero who saved him in her previous life, and he wanted to repay her in this life. Later on, whenever this matter was mentioned, Luo Qingshan would always change her words. You're the hero who saved me in my previous life. No, my wife is. Gong Yubai always turned into a loyal little dog. After they got married, he had never refuted his wife. Even if he was occasionally anxious, he would become especially gentle when he saw her. Some stories didn't have to be separated by life and death to be moving. Her story with Gong Yubai might seem smooth, but it could also move people's hearts. As for the others, Gu Ming's death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment, but because he was locked up in another prison, he lost his right to be the boss and was often beaten. Not long after, his lungs bled and he died. Yi Xiao didn't claim his body. The last time they met, Gu Ming was still scolded by Yi Xiao, who wanted her to use her connections to stay in the original prison. However, Yi Xiao had no choice. After the two of them had a big fight, they never saw each other again. Gu Ming thought that Yi Xiao would look for him again like before, but when Yi Xiao saw Luo Xiao holding another woman's hand and walking out of the company, she regretted it. She felt that she still had a chance, as long as she cut off all ties with Gu Ming. After all, the man who was called a spare tire loved her. After all, they still had a daughter. However, some love was missed. Luo Xiao rejected Yi Xiao and finally married Yin Man. A man in his 40s was a flower. Luo Xiao was especially handsome at the wedding. Luo Qingshan was also happy that her father had found true love. As for Gu Fanfan, she heard that she married a man who was 10 years older than her. The man and his ex-wife had a child, and she became the child's stepmother. As for whether she was doing well, Luo Qingshan didn't care. However, Jin Yishuan wasn't doing very well. He had always been thinking about his childhood sweetheart, so he hadn't gotten married. It was probably because he couldn't get over it. He felt that he had let go of the person he loved the most. In this plane, there didn't seem to be anything sad. 100 years later, he died without any illness. He had nothing to worry about in the mortal world and was accompanied by the yellow springs. Everything was dim, and the sound of chaos could be heard. Recalling everything that had happened in the previous plane, she still felt a sweetness in her heart that lingered for a long time. Welcome back to the Chaos Space. The following is a summary of the data for this mission. Please read it carefully. Name: Luo Qingshan Plane Space. Oh my god. Mary Sue's world mission completion rate: 100%. There are currently 5 items in the express storage: 4/5 exquisite ring, 9-section moon whip, Phoenix Dance Sword, Universal Medicine Box. Permanent ability: Space and Time Freeze LV 5 permanent ability. Teleportation LV 3 exchange points. 6,000 base points. 40. Host's 40th mission panel is below. In the next second, the image in the bronze mirror changed. Mission level: A. Experience gained 500. Female lead: Luo Qingshan male lead. Du Jiusheng supporting female lead. Cold Moon supporting male lead. Du Qi Chao. Chapter 2556. When receiving the memories, Luo Qingshan was very nervous, and even her fingers were trembling. As the saying goes, happiness might come late, but it will never be absent. But even now, she didn't know if happiness would come between her and Du Jiusheng. Crossing the path of reincarnation, thinking of the Emperor for 9 lives. Why did these words make her feel so afraid? This time, his story finally arrived in the ancient times. The court was divided into the north and south, so the division of power was very serious. The previous host was the daughter of a magistrate, a member of the North faction. Since she was young, she had an engagement with the crown prince. When she grew up, she would marry the crown prince and become the crown princess that everyone envied. This marriage was personally arranged by the current empress because the prefectural magistrate had saved her life in the past. It was a pity that the crown prince didn't have this intention. In the early years, the crown prince was naughty, so the emperor sent him to the most famous 3 clear mountain to cultivate. At that time, he met his true love, senior sister Lung Qing. He called her senior sister, and she called him by his pet name. Yu Lung Qing was the strongest girl in 3 clear mountain other than his martial uncle's generation. She always wore cold white clothes and held the autumn frost sword, teaching the crown prince swordsmanship in the snow. The crown prince, who had always been naughty, had never been late to her class. It wasn't because he loved swordsmanship, but rather because he had fallen in love with this girl with extraordinary swordsmanship. It was like the morning light entering a cup of water, and Yu Lung Qing was like a piece of sugar that sweetened his entire life. It was a pity that the man had feelings and the woman didn't. Yu Lung Qing's parents had died when she was young, so she carried a blood feud. She only wanted revenge. She didn't have time to care about love. Because when her life-saving master, Yuan Mo, asked her what name she wanted, she said, "I want to be called Lung Qing." Yu Lung Qing. This was the name she gave herself. Most of the love in this world came from addiction. The more you couldn't get something, the more you wanted it. Like the crown prince, Du 7 dynasties. Like the previous host, Luo Qingshan. The previous host liked the crown prince since she was young. She had bought all the rouge and face powder in Emoan City before she was 10 years old. She liked to put on exquisite makeup before heading to the crown prince's eastern palace to find Du 7 dynasties. It was a pity that most of the crown prince's highness didn't call her. Only when a girl's preferences were asked would she be summoned to the palace. The original owner was pure and thought that Du Qi Chao would be her future husband, so she never thought that he would fall in love with another person. And this woman was older than him by 5 years, 20 years of doing. The original owner was 16 years old, exactly 16 years old. He longed for the time when Duqi dynasty would come to marry her. He brought Yu Lingxing back to Mo and city from Sanqing Mountain and back to the Eastern Palace, to the outside world. It was said that senior sister Lung Qing's martial arts were superior, and she was his personal bodyguard. Internally, who didn't know that the current crown prince was keeping a mistress in his golden house? It was probably because of the rumors that the host finally took notice of Cold Moon. She had never done anything wrong in her entire life. The only thing she had done wrong was to cause her entire family to be executed. But when he thought about it carefully, it wasn't a huge mistake. It was just because he said a few disrespectful words to Yu Lingxing in the Eastern Palace that caused a lifetime of tragedy. In her memories, it was a snowy afternoon. Yu Lingxing was practicing her sword in the snow. Probably because she was too engrossed in it, her sword dance caused the snow on the ground to fall onto the head of the previous host. Chapter 2557. Crown Prince Du Qizhao probably heard this, and before Yu Lingxing could react, he was already standing in front of her and scolding the previous host. "What right do you have to do this to my senior sister?" The previous host's tears fell when she was scolded by Du Qizhao. Those rumors weren't wrong. The person Du Qizhao loved was none other than this senior sister from Sanqing Mountain. In a world of ice and snow, the cold wind blew the broken jade clear bell at her waist. That was the present Du Qizhao gave her on her birthday when she was 5 years old. The only present. Yu Lingxing didn't say a word from beginning to end. She was like the darling of the heavens and always had someone protecting her behind her back. However, her eyes were always on the broken jade clear bell of the previous host. The previous host left the Eastern Palace crying. When she returned home, she didn't eat or drink and kept reflecting on what she had done wrong. She wanted to work hard and have a chance to stand by Du Qizhao's side again. It was a pity that some things weren't qualified just because you worked hard. In Du Qizhao's eyes, Yu Lingxing was like an autumn pond, better than the stars. It was the most beautiful scenery in the world. However, the previous host was just fine sand on the ground. When the cold wind blew, she disappeared into the most inconspicuous dust in the world. Some love had nothing to do with status. Some people did it for their love, regardless of integrity or kindness. That night, Yu Lingxing took a pot of wine and went to find Du Qizhao for the first time. The moonlight was picturesque, and the peach blossoms were thick. She said, although she was only 10 years old when her family was exterminated, she remembered some scenes very clearly. She dared to say that she had seen the bell at the waist of the woman she saw today, 13 years ago. She suspected that the person who exterminated her family was related to the Luo family. At that time, Yu Lingxing couldn't see the expression in Du Qizhao's eyes. There was surprise, panic, and certainty. The senior sister, who had always been cold to him, had taken the initiative to find him today. This might be a chance for him, but he seemed to have an impression of what happened 12 years ago. After reading through many documents, Du Qizhao knew that he hadn't given the broken jade clear bell to Luo Qingchen 10 years ago. At that time, the person who was carrying it was himself. He vaguely remembered that the conflict between the northern and southern sects was particularly fierce. Many Jianghu people were involved in the conflict. Back then, Yu Lingxing's parents were one of them. When two sects fought, there would definitely be casualties. The Yu clan was the sacrifice of the North sect. They secretly worked for the current empress, but in the end, their families were destroyed by their own masters. In order to let the crown prince grow up, the empress took the crown prince with her that time. Yu Qinglong, who was hiding in the shadows, saw this scene. Her mouth was covered by the butler, and blood filled her eyes. After that day, she fell seriously ill and couldn't remember many things. The only thing that left a deep impression on him was the broken jade bell. The housekeeper and her were held hostage on the road, and they happened to meet the cultivator of Sanqing Mountain, Yuan Mo. Not long after she went up the mountain, the housekeeper fell seriously ill. Before he died, he told her not to take revenge. She desperately asked who her enemy was, but the housekeeper didn't tell her in the end. After the butler's death, she changed her name from Yulan to Yulongqing. Master Yuan Mo told her to let go of her hatred, but she believed that if it wasn't for revenge, she didn't know the meaning of living anymore. Chapter 2558. After knowing that Yulongqing was Yulan, Du Qichao panicked. It turned out that the enemy she had been looking for so many years was the royal family. It turned out to be his mother. He couldn't let Yulongqing know about this. He could only beat her at her own game and push the bomb of broken jade bell to the Luo family. He didn't want to marry the original host. If he could use this matter to topple the magistrate and gain Yulongqing's love, how could he not do such a thing that could kill two birds with one stone? He gave himself a very good reason, but it was just his selfish heart causing trouble, because he couldn't let Yulongqing know that the person who killed his family was actually his mother. He vaguely remembered that it was a day with few stars. He took a jar of wine to find Yulongqing and told her about the broken jade bell. Yulongqing was burning with anxiety. For the first time, she had a different expression. Du Qichao was very surprised. He asked, "If I help you take revenge, are you willing to give yourself to me?" After a long time, she nodded and said, "Okay." "Really?" "Yes, but you must kill the whole family." She was the only one left in the Yu family. How could 34 lives be replaced by one life? "I promise you." This was the promise Du Qichao gave her, a cruel and dark promise. Since then, Du Qichao set up a trap step by step. If he wanted to topple the magistrate, he couldn't use the enmity from more than 10 years ago as the premise. There must be an absolute accusation, a false accusation. Since Magistrate Luo and the Empress were members of the northern faction and his daughter was engaged to the crown prince, he naturally didn't guard against Du Qichao, but he didn't expect that he would deliberately plot to kill him. When Luo Feng reacted, there was no room for redemption. All kinds of evidence of collusion with the Liao army for half a year surfaced overnight. Without any preparation, Luo Feng couldn't defend himself. After all, no matter how smart a person was, there was no way to guard against a deliberate plot. In the end, the Luo family was sentenced to be executed for betraying the country. The Empress remembered that Luo Feng had saved her life. The day before the execution, she entered the prison and exchanged the life of her personal maid for the life of the original host. At noon the next day, all 66 members of the Luo clan were executed. The executor was the current crown prince, Du Qichao. That day, it rained heavily in Emoan City. The rain continued for 3 days and 3 nights. Blood flowed like a river on the execution platform, filling the air with the smell of blood. The original owner scolded the Empress and brought her back to the palace, becoming her personal maid. However, the story wasn't over yet. 7 months later, the crown prince married Yulongqing, the senior sister of Mount Sanqing. Luo Qingshun didn't believe that Du Qichao would be so cruel to her. She went to the East Palace alone while the Empress was away. Standing behind the screen, he inadvertently heard the conversation between Du Qichao and Cold Moon. "Now that you've taken your revenge, you don't have to worry about it anymore. Just stand by my side and I'll protect you." "But I don't want to take revenge like this." Cold Moon sighed deeply. "It's against morality. Isn't that the same? They deserve to die. They should have died 13 years ago. Alas, I'll marry you and become your crown princess. But I want them to die because they killed my family, not because they colluded with the enemy." She knew what Du Qichao had done in the past 6 months. Even if she didn't know everything, she knew a little. Chapter 2559. The previous host standing behind the screen felt like she had been struck by lightning. The Luo family had been exterminated, so naturally her heart was filled with hatred. But the Liao people had always been like this since ancient times, so even if she hated them, she couldn't take revenge. But now, she knew that this wasn't the case. The man she loved the most had actually wiped out her entire family, just because he wanted another woman. This was such a dark act, devoid of all humanity. She immediately rushed out, picked up a long sword, and stabbed it in Du Qichao's direction. But when it was about to reach his throat, she turned and stabbed at Yulongqing. The previous host didn't know martial arts, so even if Yulongqing wasn't on guard, she still dodged in a moment of danger. The sword only pierced her shoulder, but the previous host wasn't that lucky. When Du Qichao came back to his senses, he directly took the sword from the previous host's hand. A single slash to her throat. Blood spurted out, and she slowly fell down. Her moving eyes were filled with tears. Perhaps love was like this. Once you fell in, it was hard to pull away. As long as something confused you enough, it was enough to destroy you. Being soft-hearted was a sickness. Being too deeply in love was fatal. The previous host died like this. The moment she died, Du Qichao quickly turned around to protect Yulong Qing. He covered her eyes and gently whispered in her ear, "Don't look." This was the previous host's story. It was sad, sad, and sad. That was the end of the memory. In the previous host's memories, Du Jiushang's existence was very low. He was the son of the Cold Palace's concubine Ro. Concubine Ro was the minister's daughter back then and was a member of the South. She had been loved and doted on by the emperor, but the empress belonged to the North. With the North and South fighting and the jealous women of the harem, concubine Ro finally died in a storm of blood. She only left a son, Du Jiushang. Cold North Palace, the cold palace that Xia Ro had lived in before. After she died, no one came here, and it became even more desolate. Other than the zither, sword, and wine, there was only the little eunuch mute slave with him. That was a eunuch who couldn't speak and couldn't walk properly. Because he had been disliked for many years, he was sent to the cold palace by the head eunuch. But for mute slave, it was a great blessing. Although even the food in the cold palace wasn't good, they were happy and carefree. Du Jiushang was very good to him, inviting him to share any good food or wine. He was born handsome and often played the guqin in the courtyard. Palace maids or young mistresses would throw him pastries or silver tails. Although he was in the depths of the cold palace, he did not have to worry about food and clothing as a performer in disguise. However, his bone-chilling eyes always carried a determination that was different from ordinary people. The original owner didn't know about this part of her memory. The scene in her mind was given to her by the system. Special planes, special planes, special planes. She repeated these words 3 times in her heart, constantly reminding herself that in this place, other than martial arts, she did not have any other abilities that were different from ordinary people. No system, no arcana. The most terrifying thing was that she didn't come to this plane when the Luo family was flourishing, but after her entire family was exterminated, she followed the Empress's palace maid to the Tranquility Palace. Stay close. Your identity is special. You can't show off. The palace maid you are in front of her carefully told her. Luo Qingchen nodded and quickly followed her. This kind of identity, this kind of moment, it was too troublesome for her. Chapter 2560. Tranquility Palace. This was the palace where the Empress lived. The palace was magnificent and magnificent. Luo Qingchen slightly knit her brows and looked down as she walked forward. Empress, this servant has brought her here. Yuer bowed and gestured with her right hand behind her back. Luo Qingchen immediately understood and quickly bowed. Greetings to the Empress. Is it Qing? The Empress slowly walked out from behind the screen with a hint of worry in her eyes. She stepped forward and held her hand. She sighed deeply and said, "This Empress has let you down. Let Luo Gong down." As for the execution of the Luo clan, how could she not know that it was her own son's doing? He was too infatuated with the woman from Sanqing Mountain, so much so that he did unscrupulous things to marry her. When she found out that her son had the intention to frame the magistrate, Luo Feng, it was too late. Betraying the country was not a small matter. The emperor was furious and ordered a thorough investigation. If the result was found out that it was all her son's scheming, then she was afraid that the crown prince of the 7 dynasties would not be able to keep his position. In this case, even if she knew that the crown prince did it on purpose, she could not say anything. The 66 lives of the Luo clan became a tool for the crown prince to capture the heart of his sweetheart. Life is unpredictable. Empress leaving me alive is Qingchen's fortune. Luo Qingchen slightly lowered her eyes, her long eyelashes fluttering. Her voice was very cold. different from her previous delicate voice. The Empress could hear it, but after thinking about it, she had just experienced such a big change. It was normal for her temperament to change. Tonight you have a good rest, and stay with me in the Tranquility Palace. The Empress gently patted her hand and said, "Life is not as you wish." This Empress promised Luo Gong to take good care of you. If you have any requests, you can tell this Empress. Empress. In the next second, Luo Qingshun knelt down. Her clear eyes were indifferent. She slightly nodded and looked at the Empress. With such a big thing happening in the Luo clan, if my heart is as clear as a mirror, it would be too hypocritical. I have a presumptuous request that I hope your Majesty can fulfill. The Empress looked at her, a faint mist flashing through her phoenix eyes. Regardless of whether it was the Luo family or her, she had let them down. She used to be such a delicate young lady, but now... Say it. The Empress reached out her right hand and gently helped her up. If I can do it, I can promise you anything. Thank you, Empress. Luo Qingshun's eyebrows trembled slightly as she said, "If we leave the palace now, we won't be able to live for long. Although the Luo family doesn't have many enemies, they are not few either. But if I stay in the Tranquility Palace, it will remind me of my home, and my heart will not be at peace for a long time." Luo Qingshun had paved the way. She looked up at the Empress and said, "Your Majesty, why don't you let me work in the Beihan Palace? Right now, I just want to spend the rest of my life in a quiet place." Northern Cold Palace. The Empress frowned and said, "That is the Cold Palace. It is located in a remote area. Do you really want to go there?" Looking at her faint eyebrows, the Empress knew that this girl's heart was really dead. She thought that if she stayed in the Tranquility Palace, she might meet the Crown Prince. Although she left her life, the Crown Prince also knew. But it was always good to not see. Good. After a long time, she sighed deeply and said, "Your monthly salary will be according to the Tranquility Palace. If you need anything, you can come to this Empress at any time." "Thank you, Your Majesty." The Empress probably thought that she really wanted to stay away from the world, but in fact, she just missed someone. Chapter 2561. Thick snow, heavy walls. Vermilion tiles, high buildings. Deep in the palace, every walk was a kind of enlightenment. From the Tranquility Palace to the Northern Cold Palace was the most real palace, prosperous but sad. Most of the people in the palace were ranked in this way. The Northern Cold Palace was located in the southernmost part of the palace. After crossing the South Gate, there was freedom. "I say, you are strange. Why don't you stay in the Tranquility Palace, but come to the Northern Cold Palace?" You were led her forward and didn't forget to murmur, "You have to know that in the palace, not only the nobles have different ranks, but also the palace maids. The difference between the palace maids in the Tranquility Palace and the Northern Cold Palace was like heaven and earth, especially the palace maids of the Empress. Even the young mistresses in the palace had to be polite to them. But if they were the palace maids of the Cold Palace, even the palace maids in the laundry room could order you around and be looked down upon by others. You naturally didn't understand why she made such a choice, but she thought that the mentality of the people who were left behind after their whole family was more or less different from ordinary people. "I just want to find a quiet place to do things without distractions." Luo Qingshun pursed her lips and said, "Thank you for your kindness, Sister Yuer." Sigh. Yuer sighed lightly when she heard that and said, "But you don't have to worry. I personally brought you here along the way. Everyone also saw it. They know that you are the Empress's person, and you get the monthly salary from the Tranquility Palace, so they dare not do anything to you." "Yes, thanks to the Empress and Sister Yuer." Luo Qingshun nodded slightly and said lightly, "For her, these were not important. The important thing was that the closer she got to the Northern Cold Palace, the faster her heart beat. She said goodbye so many times and said that she would wait for me so many times. Goodbye was not a parting word, but a vow to meet again. She came to this world with this vow, but her heart trembled in the snow-covered promenade. "It's late. I have to go to the Imperial Kitchen to get the Empress Bird's nest porridge, so I will send you here." "Well, thank you, Sister Yuer." Luo Qingshun nodded and said, "Help me thank the Empress again." "All right." Yuer pointed at the path in front of them and said, "Follow this endless corridor and walk straight ahead. Once you reach the end, You'll reach the northern cold palace on your right. This is my token. If you want to find me, just bring it to a Ning palace." As soon as she finished speaking, she placed a handkerchief in her hand and continued, "Be careful when you're alone in the cold palace. The master of the northern cold palace has a strange personality, but many palace maids are mesmerized by him. Be careful." She didn't know why, but when you said this, she felt secretly delighted. This joy arose spontaneously and spread from the bottom of his heart. "Good. Big sister you should leave first. It wouldn't be good if you delay Her Highness matters." "Yes." As soon as she finished speaking, you turned around and left. Luo Qingshan lowered her head and looked at the brocade handkerchief in her hand. She sighed with emotion. Now that they met again, you really didn't know if they were friends or foes. After all, she was the one who knew the whole story. The Empress was the enemy after all. Her son was the one who killed her family. Crossing the 7 dynasties, if she, Luo Qingshan, couldn't kill her enemy with her own hands, it would be a waste of the opportunity that the system sent her to this time. There was nothing but ruthlessness. If it was half a year earlier, when the Luo clan was still alive, she might have a way to save her family. Chapter 2562. Walking along the long corridor of the snowy land. After 100 steps, she could hear a commotion. "You mute. Who told you not to greet us when you see us?" Mutes are cheap. If you can't speak, then say, "Hey, hey, hey," like an idiot. "I told you to pick up this lady's embroidered shoes, and you're still in a daze." You really deserve to be a eunuch and a mute. If we didn't want you to give something to Ninth Master, do you think we would be willing to say a word to you? An idiot is an idiot. Luo Qingshan used her qinggong to jump onto the eaves and used the willow tree to cover her body as she watched everything that was happening in front of her. 3 palace maids surrounded a eunuch and continuously used their hands and feet to hit the eunuch. She saw the eunuch crouching on the ground to protect his head and could only let out a groan from time to time. Luo Qingshan slightly knit her brows. She didn't want to meddle in other people's business, but this kind of scene was really hard to watch. In the next second, she broke off a willow tree and used her qinggong to land on the ground. Using the willow tree's branch, she quickly hit the 3 palace maids' faces. "Ah!" Hearing 3 different screams, her heart instantly felt refreshed. Although she didn't have any abilities, she didn't have the Phoenix dance sword, she didn't have the exquisite ring, and she didn't have the system. But her movement techniques still belonged to her. Not to mention this kind of small fry. Even if it was someone with strong martial arts, they might not be her match. "Who is it?" The head palace maid loudly shouted. "Come out for this old lady." "Humph!" Luo Qingshan lightly snorted. Flicking her sleeve, she steadily landed in front of the little eunuch. Looking at the 3 palace maids in front of her, she said, "What kind of skill is bullying a little eunuch? If you have the ability, then come and bully me." She crossed her arms over her chest as a trace of disdain flashed in her eyes. Although this kind of thing was common in the palace, when it truly happened in front of her eyes, if she had to turn around and leave, she really didn't feel like it was her style. The 3 palace maids looked at each other in dismay. Then one of them whispered to the person in the middle, "Yesterday, I said in the inner palace that she was originally a palace made of the Ning Palace and asked to be transferred here." The person in the middle was clearly unconvinced. She raised her voice and said, "So what? She's still a palace made of the cold palace." But the problem is," another person continued, "we can't beat her either." The speed of the person in front of them was too fast. They didn't know where he came from, but it was as if he had appeared in front of them in an instant. With such skills, even the Imperial Guards would not be able to match up to him. The palace maid standing in the middle had her head held high on the surface, but in her heart, she was terrified. She naturally knew that she was no match for Luo Qingshan, so she could only point at her nose and say arrogantly, "Just you wait." After saying those harsh words, he turned around and left. His pace was especially fast. Luo Qingshan snorted coldly and muttered, bullying the weak and fearing the strong. The next second, she turned around and helped the young eunuch up. "Are you all right?" The mute slave quickly shook his head and wanted to kneel down to thank Luo Qingshan. She seemed to understand what he meant as she held his hand and said, "It's not like that. You should be the mute's slave." The plot that appeared in the other memories, other than Du Jiusheng, there was also this eunuch. The one who accompanied him all year round was a mute who was weak by nature and was often bullied. No wonder, a eunuch in the cold palace, the most humble eunuch in the entire palace. Naturally, he would be bullied. Chapter 2563. He was very surprised because he had never seen this girl in front of him before. But not only did she save him, she even knew his name. The mute slave seriously looked at Luo Qingchen. Although she was wearing a simple pink robe and there was only a wooden hairpin in her long hair, she didn't have anything else on her. But when he looked at her, she looked so beautiful. Her black eyebrows were slightly raised, her cherry lips were not stained red, and her starry eyes were twinkling. Her entire body exuded the sweet fragrance of orchids, faint as dust and indescribably beautiful. She was releasing an aura that was different from normal people. She was so beautiful that she didn't eat the food of mortals. She was beautiful to the extreme. This was the first reaction the mute slave had when he saw Luo Qingchen. He couldn't describe it, but his heart was greatly shocked. Luo Qingchen looked at him, gesturing to ask her what she was doing here. Behind her was the cold palace, so he didn't want her to go forward. Otherwise, it would be dark soon. "I am the maid sent to the northern cold palace today." Luo Qingchen looked up with a faint smile. "We'll meet often in the future." The mute slave was stunned as his eyes filled with surprise. Other than the little maids who came to see Du Jiusheng every day, there hadn't been anyone sent to the northern cold palace for a long time. Seeing was not the same as being sent. The little maids wouldn't let themselves live a life of not being able to eat or wear warm clothes for Du Jiusheng, as well as being looked down upon by others. "I'm the daughter of a guilty minister, so things are a bit complicated," Luo Qingchen said with a helpless smile. "Just treat it as being punished." The mute slave seemed to understand Luo Qingchen's meaning and moved aside with an a sound before leading her towards the northern cold palace. When the melodious sound of a zither rang out, she realized that she had been standing outside the door for a long time. Her eyes were slightly red, and the growth rings of her memories seemed to have completely recovered at this moment. The mute slave looked at her with a doubtful look. When he wanted to help her open the door, Luo Qingchen opened herself. "Du Jiusheng, Du Jiusheng, Du Jiusheng." She repeated his name 3 times in her heart. The cold wind caressed her, causing her long eyelashes and deep heart to tremble. With a ding, the sound of the zither entered the climax. High mountains and flowing water intertwined with each other, causing people to unconsciously enter the mood and become nervous. After a while, the sound of the guqin faded away. His slender fingers gently stroked the guqin as he slowly raised his eyes. His deep gaze looked straight into the depths of her starry eyes, causing her to unconsciously stop breathing. That young man was still standing among the crowd like a pearl among the tiles. He was dressed in a moon-white brocade robe, which was elegant but did not lose its nobility. That pair of unfathomably handsome eyes had a dark light. Being cultured and refined was the best interpretation of him, but it was not the most perfect interpretation. She had seen this appearance many times, but it was different every time. To her, parting was a helpless pain, but reuniting was a moment of fear. 1,000 years in a single glance was probably what she was feeling right now. "What is it?" He opened his mouth first, his cold voice carrying a hint of doubt. That was because when he looked at her, his heart strangely skipped a beat. A feeling that he had never felt before filled his heart, and his fingers that stroked the zither began to tremble. "I am Luo Qingchen. I will be the maid of the northern cold palace from now on." She put down the bag in her hand and walked towards him step by step. With a cold wind, the plum blossoms in the yard fell with the wind, falling onto her hair and falling onto the strings of his zither. She put her hands on the table and leaned over to look at him. "I know you are called Du Jiusheng. You." Chapter 2564. When they met for the first time, there was a faint starlight in her focused eyes. It was like her love was as deep as water, like she was making an oath. But Du Jiusheng didn't know that for Luo Qingshun, she didn't want to spend time guessing each other's feelings. In this special world, the things she could do were limited. This wasn't related to strength. Rather, there were many things that she couldn't change, so she couldn't do anything. Because she didn't know if tomorrow or an accident would come first, she didn't need to hesitate about the things in her heart. Du Jiusheng was clearly surprised. His face that was as cold as ice couldn't help revealing a blush. This blush spread to his ears bit by bit, making his heart beat faster. Although he was a down-and-out prince living in the cold palace, there were many people who used subtle ways to express their goodwill and confess their feelings to him. However, his heart did not waver at all because of this matter. After his mother died, love seemed to have become less important. He couldn't even protect his mother. How could he protect his wife? Caring for himself had explained his state of mind over the past few years. But this state of mind had been completely shattered by this girl who had suddenly broken into his world. Gu, miss, you can call me Qing Shun. I can call you Big Brother Jiusheng. Qing. Du Jiusheng's beautiful eyes suddenly trembled, and one could feel the nervousness in his breathing. He softly said, Miss, please respect yourself. As soon as his voice fell, he stood up in a panic and walked into the room. There was a dong sound as the zither fell to the ground, but he didn't turn back. Big Brother Jiusheng, you dropped your zither. Ignore it. She vaguely heard Du Jiusheng's response, and her lips couldn't help curling into a faint smile. Was Du Jiusheng too reserved, or was she too direct? Luo Qingshun held her chin in thought as she muttered, Do I not respect myself? The mute slave at the side seemed to come back to his senses. He hurriedly went forward and picked up the zither. After carefully wiping it, he stood in front of Luo Qingshun and continued to dance with joy. Actually, she didn't know much about sign language, but mute slave's gestures were very exaggerated. She could roughly understand what he meant. This zither was very important to Du Jiusheng, but he had accidentally dropped it today and said don't care about it. This kind of Jiu really gave the mute slave a scare. Luo Qingshun expressed that after she understood the meaning of the mute slave's dancing, she was even happier in her heart. This proved that Du Jiusheng was very panicked just now. As it turned out, she was right. Du Jiusheng paced back and forth in the room 20 times before coming back to the yard. Mute slave, go and tidy up the west wing. In the next second, he looked at Luo Qingshun and said, Come with me. There was an inexplicable joy that hit his heart. He never liked running away. There were some things that he had to clarify. Where are we going? Luo Qingshun pursed her lips and said, I'm hungry. I want to eat something. Du Jiusheng made up his mind to talk, but when she said hungry, it all collapsed. He gave a helpless sigh and said, There are many ingredients in the kitchen that came in this morning. The mute slave came back late today and didn't make anything. Do you know how to make it? I don't. Luo Qingshun blinked as a faint sparkle appeared in her eyes. After replying, she didn't forget to ask back, Do you know how to? Chapter 2565. 2 hours later, Luo Qingshun was sitting at the table, and the simple dishes made her drool. The fact was, she really was hungry. Westlake osmanthus fish, braised twice-cooked pork, stir-fried garlic, and a bowl of egg drop soup. The mute slave, standing on the side, was also very surprised. He looked at the dishes on the table before looking at Du Jiusheng. After that, he gave him a thumbs up. Du Jiusheng looked at him and said, Normally you're the one who cooks for me. You can also taste my cooking today. He and the mute slave didn't seem like a master and servant relationship. Although the mute slave treated him as a master, he was more like a friend to the mute slave. So, it's because of me? Luo Qingshun's clear eyes had a faint li guang in them. Actually, she just wanted to be with Du Jiusheng like this. Not caring about worldly disputes, being a bit more simple and peaceful, spending the rest of her life peacefully. This was a great blessing for her. Didn't you say you were hungry? Why aren't you eating? Du Jiusheng's eyes were calm, but he could feel that he was deliberately hiding the throbbing in his heart. Fierce. Luo Qingshun gave a proud snort. Big Brother Jiusheng isn't gentle at all. It was because she knew who he was, so even if it was her first time meeting, she felt relaxed talking to him. Relaxed. You're calling me Big Brother. Are you certain that you're younger than me? Du Jiusheng narrowed his eyes and looked up at her. I'm 16. It's not wrong to call you Big Brother. Luo Qingchun ate the twice-cooked pork as she said, It can't be that you're still a baby, right? Cook. Du Jiusheng gave 2 helpless coughs. Call me that, call me that. Without knowing why, he felt that he couldn't do anything to this girl in front of him. He felt that he wasn't himself anymore. He wasn't willing to refute her or bully her, but he strangely wanted to do everything she wanted. This feeling was like a hot spring flowing through his blood into his ice-cold heart. He couldn't control it and wasn't willing to reject it. Big Brother Jiusheng. Big Brother Jiusheng. Luo Qingchun called out twice in a row. Pursing her lips, she smiled and said, You don't know how hard it was to wait for you. Fortunately, I was firm. Otherwise, you would have become a lonely old man. Waiting for me? Du Jiusheng narrowed his eyes and looked over Luo Qingchun. Although you're dressed as a maid, you don't seem like a normal girl. Qing, did something happen to Miss Luo? Humph. Luo Qingchun snorted and said with a displeased expression, Miss Luo sounds so distant. What kind of relationship do we have? Big Brother Jiusheng doesn't want to take responsibility. Du Jiusheng was stunned, but he couldn't find a way to refute her. After all, he had said the words, What kind of relationship do we have? Perhaps, in the depths of his heart, he was unwilling to say it. Luo Qingchun didn't wait for him to reply as she continued eating while casually saying, It isn't that big of a matter, it's just that my family was exterminated. Although she tried to control her emotions, although this kind of hatred was the previous host's matter. But when she said it like this, her heart still felt very uncomfortable. She had to take revenge for her family being exterminated. Chapter 2566. Luo Qingchun was just using a more relaxed method to talk about this matter. After all, the matter had already been set, and she couldn't change it, so she didn't need to act pitiful. Whether it was the previous host's scars or her own scars, it was fine as long as she knew it. If she revealed it to others, they might not be moved. But Du Jiusheng seemed different. He could feel his heart thumping, and he felt a great pressure in his heart. It was probably because it was such a heavy matter, but the other side used such a casual tone to talk about it, so it made one's heart ache. The mute slave, standing on the side, also seemed to feel something as he gave a soft sigh. Mute slave, I'm happy today, so prepare 2 jugs of wine. Miss Qingchun and I will drink 2 cups. Du Jiusheng looked at her and said, Can you drink? Drinking really is a small matter. Luo Qingchun put her right hand on her cheek and looked at him with her bright eyes. But can we not call each other miss? It's so strange. Then I'll call you Qing. Du Jiusheng said with a helpless smile. Having me call you little sister Qingchun feels like I'm taking advantage of you. Luo Qingchun heard this and muttered, I don't mind being taken advantage of by you. What did you say? No. Luo Qingchun cleared her throat and said, We won't go back until we're drunk. We won't go back until we're drunk. The mute slave saw that the 2 of them were happy, so he was also very happy. Since concubine Ro left, it had been several years, but he had never seen Ninth Master as happy as he was today. In the cold palace, Luo Qingchun was like a ray of light that shined into their lives, including him. After the meal, she returned to the room that the mute slave had prepared to rest. The mute slave was very meticulous. Every place was clean and tidy. The bedding was also changed into a brand new one. Luo Qingchun sat on the edge of the bed and looking around, she couldn't help smiling. This feeling was really good. If she could live like this for the rest of her life, the hatred in her heart would be halved. Ko. Come in. Luo Qingchun looked up and saw a mute slave carrying a box walking in. Every time the mute slave wanted to express what he wanted to say, he would dance with joy. If he wasn't a eunuch and a mute, he would definitely be a very lively person. Luo Qingchun opened the box. Inside were some brand new decorations and some high-quality tea leaves. What surprised her the most was that there was a big mirror. Where did you get this mirror? Luo Qingchun chuckled I didn't expect the mute slave to understand a girl's thoughts so well. He lowered his head in embarrassment and kept waving his hand. Luo Qingshun chuckled and said very solemnly, "In the future, please take care of me in the northern cold palace." Mute slave. The mute slave hurriedly shook his head and gestured with his hands. His meaning was probably to take care of each other. After helping Luo Qingshun pack up her things, the mute slave left. When he left, he didn't forget to signal her to take an afternoon nap. There were no dreams, and it was already evening when she woke up. The mute slave was watering the plants in the back garden, while Du Jiusheng was reading in the pavilion. When he saw Luo Qingshun slowly walking over, he said to the mute slave, "Qing'er is awake. We can make dinner now." The mute slave put down the kettle in his hand and headed to the kitchen. "You were waiting for me to eat." Luo Qingshun revealed an embarrassed smile. "You could have woken me up." Chapter 2567. Luo Qingshun sat down beside him, and he had already brewed tea for her. The fragrant dragon well tea had been brewed for the first time, and the fragrance of the tea was left in the cup. "You slept very well." Luo Qingshun held her cheeks with her hands as she looked at Du Jiusheng with a slightly red face. "I just feel like I'm not here to be a maid, but rather a young miss." Actually, it wasn't just a feeling, it was just like this. She wanted to use a radical method to stay by his side, so she thought of countless possibilities. Du Jiusheng was cold to her. Du Jiusheng disdained her. Du Jiusheng hated her. After all, this was their first time meeting, and her bold confession really wasn't reserved. But Du Jiusheng wasn't cold to her, didn't disdain her or hate her. Rather, he strangely pampered her. Although he didn't say it clearly, she could feel it. You didn't want to be a proper maid when you came to the northern cold palace, right? Du Jiusheng took a sip of tea as a faint sparkle appeared in his deep eyes, and a faint smile appeared on his lips. He didn't know why, but his boring life had suddenly become meaningful. Luo Qingshun pursed her lips and said, "Why didn't I come to be a proper maid? Are you certain?" Seeing the teasing tone in Du Jiusheng's voice, why did Luo Qingshun suddenly feel like he was teasing her? Since it was like this, it was better to hurt each other. She raised a brow and looked at him with a love-struck look. Didn't I come to the northern cold palace with the dream of marrying big brother Jiusheng?" There was a soft flick on his forehead as Du Jiusheng looked at her with slightly red ears. "Sweet mouth. Your lifelong wish is to marry a downtrodden prince? If it wasn't for the magistrate being framed, the one you would have married would have been the crown prince." Without knowing why, when he said the second half of his words, his heart was strangely blocked. Although he was a prince of the cold palace, he had been keeping a low profile for the past few years. It wasn't to fight for the throne, but to prevent himself from being framed again in the future so that he wouldn't have to wait for death and be unable to fight back. He only used half an hour to find out everything about Luo Qingshun. She was the daughter of the former prefectural magistrate and the fiancée of the crown prince, Du Qichao. It seems like big brother Jiusheng has been biding his time in the northern cold palace. You've already investigated my identity. Luo Qingshun felt the change in his expression, and her lips curled into a smile, including the matter with the crown prince. Could it be that I have poked Qing'er's sore spot? Du Jiusheng looked up with a bit of sadness in his deep eyes. It was like he couldn't hide the joy and anger in his heart as it appeared on his face. Is big brother Jiusheng jealous? Luo Qingshun looked at him with a happy face. My father was the savior of the empress. In order to repay his kindness, the empress betrothed me to the crown prince. It's a pity that the crown prince doesn't like me. Luo Qingshun only said half her words because she wanted to see Du Jiusheng's reaction. So, it's because he doesn't like you that you don't want to marry him? Du Jiusheng narrowed his eyes as he felt very uncomfortable. They had clearly just met today, but every word she said could affect his emotions. Chapter 2568. Of course not. Luo Qingshun took a sip of tea with a harmless look. I came to this world to marry you. Nothing else. As for the crown prince, if possible, I would personally kill him. Du Jiusheng looked at her and spoke in a casual tone, but there was a sharp glow in his eyes. He wanted to ask something, but the mute slave had already finished cooking and called him to dinner. The dinner was very sumptuous. The mute slave had specially changed for seafood that he normally didn't eat, so there was a dazzling array of delicacies. But he still stood on the side, not even daring to sit down. Luo Qingshun awkwardly scratched her head and said, "This is how you treat your guests. How embarrassing is this? I'm clearly the one serving Big Brother Jiusheng, but now you're serving me." The mute slave gestured with his hands, indicating that he was here to serve the two of them. "Sit down. Qing is not an outsider." Du Jiusheng softly said, "That girl was born to be the master. Just take care of her in the future." Since he couldn't stop the thoughts in his heart, he would just let them go. He knew that her weakness had appeared, so he had to protect her and not let her be hurt. The mute slave gave a few strong nods before sitting down. After a meal, there was laughter. After eating his fill, Du Jiusheng took 2 jugs of plum wine to the peony pavilion. Luo Qingshun was leaning against the pillar and leaning against the moon, looking relaxed. The breeze blew her black hair, and it looked so beautiful under the faint moonlight. Du Jiusheng was in a daze for a second before walking in her direction. "Big Brother Jiusheng." Luo Qingshun saw him walking in the moonlight and waved her hand at him as her lips curled into a faint smile. Although the plum wine isn't strong, it is still wine. He gave a small jug of wine to her. Girls shouldn't drink too much. Luo Qingshun took the jug and took a sip. It really isn't bad. The matter between you and the crown prince this evening. It was my fault. Du Jiusheng sat down beside her and took a sip of wine. Drink a cup as punishment. He knew that he had been blinded by his strange emotions. According to the investigation this afternoon, the Luo family had been exterminated because they had colluded with the Liao kingdom, and the crown prince had exposed them. However, he felt that this matter was definitely related to the crown prince. No offense, Big Brother Jiusheng's jealous expression make me very happy. Luo Qingshun said with a faint smile, but this crown prince is not a good person. Could it be that the Luo family, Du Jiusheng narrowed his eyes as he looked at her, is related to him? After keeping a low profile for so many years, the forces that should be accumulated had been accumulated. Although the intelligence network's information was weak, it should not be wrong. It's not just related to him. Luo Qingshun looked at Mingyu and took a big gulp of wine. She said coldly, it was all planned by him. As soon as his voice fell, a cold wind blew past, and it seemed like it was snowing. Du Jiusheng silently looked at her, carefully listening to what she had to say. The girl from the Three Clear Mountain, Yulong Qing, was the crown prince's true love, but her entire family was exterminated 10 years ago. Luo Qingshun narrowed her cold eyes and calmly said, "The crown prince actually said that my father killed them. But I remember that the magistrate was convicted of colluding with the Liao kingdom." Chapter 2569. Mu Shui drank How Long Was Life? Luo Qingshun used a calm tone to tell her story, but whenever she mentioned the extermination of her family, there would be a slight change in her eyes. Du Jiusheng could see it. The crown prince isn't a good person. How could the empress be a good person? Du Jiusheng gave a self-deprecating laugh. He looked at the moon in the sky and said, "Do you want to hear my story?" She was surprised. Seeing his slightly sad eyes, her heart strangely tightened. She didn't want to see his eyes like this. Thinking about it, Concubine Row was probably a sacrifice in the struggle between the North and South factions. "All right," Luo Qingshun said with a faint smile. "We said that we won't leave until we're drunk, so let's let the past be drunk in the wind." He took a sip of wine and slowly opened his mouth, telling his story. Just like her, he used a calm tone to talk about life and death. It had to be said, in the beginning, she thought that Concubine Row had died because of the struggle between the North and South factions. But it wasn't like this. Concubine Row was the one who truly lived for love. He loved Emperor Mo more than anything else. It was a pity that in Emperor Mo's eyes, the country was always more important than beauties. Rather than saying that Concubine Row was a sacrifice of the North and South factions, it was better to say that she was Emperor Mo's sacrifice. The Mo kingdom was located on the border. It wasn't as strong as the Central Plains. Rather, it was a medium-sized country that was surrounded by enemies, often being invaded by small countries. Although they returned in defeat, the battlefield always made people feel tired. Adding in the fact that the Liao people kept becoming stronger, if the Mo kingdom couldn't expand their territory and recruit more soldiers, they would be in a dangerous situation. And around the Mo kingdom, the wealthiest country with the best geographical advantage was the neighboring small Xia kingdom. Concubine Ro was the Qi country's princess, Xia Ro. Emperor Mo personally went to the summer country to express his love for Xia Ro, but he didn't know that Xia Ro would be attracted by the elegant Emperor Mo and decide to be with him. Love at first sight, love at second sight, love at third sight. Xia Ro married Emperor Mo like this, and the Mo kingdom and summer country became allies. But in reality, Emperor Mo's thoughts were not as simple as just being on good terms. He wanted to annex the Xia kingdom. 3 years later, Emperor Mo implicated Xia Ro with the southern sect on the grounds that she colluded with the rebels and conveniently banished her to the Cold Palace. Then, he officially sent troops to the Great Xia. Why 3 years? It was because Emperor Mo didn't want others to say that he married Xia Ro for the sake of Xia Kingdom. Furthermore, in the next 3 years, more than half of the people in Xia country were killed or injured due to natural disasters. As a friendly nation, not only did the Mo kingdom not lend a helping hand, but they also refused to help when they were down. At this point, the two armies had fought for less than 10 days. The Mo kingdom's army invaded the main city and successfully replaced the Xia kingdom's king. Before he died, the old king thumped his chest and shouted, "What I regret most is marrying my daughter to you." Hearing Du Jiusheng casually tell this story, she was stunned. My mother was depressed after being banished to the Cold Palace. She was a woman who lived for love, but it was a pity that Emperor Mo never came to find her again. Du Jiusheng took another large mouthful of wine as a dark glow appeared in his deep eyes. At that moment, she could feel his hatred, even if he didn't say it. His heart should be filled with hatred. But since ancient times, the love of an emperor was always cold. And then,